The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I thought I was muted that whole time. I was not. So anyway, thrilled to be here with you on this Tuesday morning. So excited to be with you. We're going to be live for the next hour. Got a great guest, lots to talk about, and we want to hear from you. We've been having so much material during the show that a lot of times we haven't been able to get to all the questions, and I'm really going to make a concerted effort today. So be writing questions in. You know, there's a lot of different ways that you can watch us. You can be watching us on our homepage, autism-live.com. But you can also be watching us on Facebook. You can be watching us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Periscope. All of those places we're live. Later on, we podcast. We're still available, all those places recorded, but we podcast directly to iTunes. It's a free download. We're also on Deezer and iHeartRadio and Spotify. So all of those places you can go and listen to us or watch us, because on iTunes you can download either way. Thrilled to be here. I've cut my hair again. I'm going to be the only woman who ends up with shorter hair at the end of this isolation than when I started. And I've decided that I really like, because then if I don't like one little part, I can just go and snip that little thing. I've lost my mind. But I want to know from you guys, I'm actually considering having a hairdresser come on and give you tips for how to cut your hair, because I have a few questions and I figure that you guys do too. And I've been watching on Facebook, and a lot of you are cutting your significant other's hair, or there are some of you who are cutting your kids' hair, and maybe you'd like some tips on that. I have threatened to cut my husband and my son's hair, and I've had no takers for the threat. They kind of move in the opposite direction when I start talking about it. But it's, they look like they're mountain men. They literally look like, they're just like, well, gonna go out and smoke some hickory, get a ham, smoke it with some hickory. That's what they look like. So let me know if that's something that you guys are interested in, because look, I just want to be of service here. I want to help you guys to be able to do the things that you need to be able to do and support you. And we're called Autism Live. And so we talk about things that can support families with autism. I always say we speak here to the greater autism community. So that starts with the core of individuals who are on the spectrum. We want to help them to get the resources and the respect that they need. And then we include on our show that outer autism community, which is everybody who loves those individuals and wants to help support them and help them to find resources. And we know that those people have to have support too, right? Because that's how the structure builds, right? So tell us what you guys need. I love this. We're glad you're back too, Maya. And Michelle, hello, morning. Raquel, morning to you. Maya, I know you got the short hair thing going too. Isn't it so much easier? I got to tell you, and I'm using less product to manage it. And it's so hot. I started by just shaving the back of my head because it's so hot in the studio. And I don't have, like the air conditioning blowing fans here that I had at the office. And I have very thick hair. And even with shaving it, I noticed last night, I was like, man, it's just like it's coming in really thick. And so it's just so much better when it's short, because it's hot out now. Somebody went to Great Clips. Oh, that's right. They're starting to open those things back up. I find that all very interesting, because for me, that's not an essential service, but I realize that I'm a little bit different in that respect. And for some people, and I know that those people need work, 100% get that, but I don't understand the whole, if things are essential, why it's bowling alleys, tattoo parlors, and hair cutting. I just like those three. It's for me, it's a little interesting, right? Of all the things. Anyway, thrilled to be here with you guys. Keep writing in, tell us what you got going on. But I want to remind you that we're going to have a great expert on the show today that I'm really excited to have her on. She was recommended to us by Eustacia Cutler. Look, it just doesn't get better than that. If you've got Eustacia Cutler saying that you're awesome, right? And she was like, Shannon, and she had several people that she was like, who'd be good? But she was like, no. For our guest today, she was like, you have to have her on. So I'm thrilled that she's going to be on the show. But I just want to remind you that while we have experts on the show frequently, I always like to remind you guys, please don't confuse me with one of the experts. I know I have a very strident voice and I act like I know what I'm talking about. Rarely do I know what I'm talking about, right? But I have an opinion, I like to say here, and it's a semi-informed opinion. I'll cut myself that amount of slack, but not an expert, right? My credentials are that I'm a former teacher and I am a mom of somebody who was diagnosed with autism, so I care deeply. That's why I'm here. Don't confuse me with the experts. That's all I ask. Now, the other thing we like to do is whenever possible, we like to start the show, kick it off with something that we call the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are the experts talking about? What does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with my life? Why should I bother to learn this? And so today's jargon is something that's going to go hand in hand with our guest. So it's the ITP. We talked yesterday about the IEP. This is the ITP. And if you don't know what this is, I'm going to send you a hug and go, it's time. Today is the day where you need to know what the ITP is. So the ITP is the Individual Transition Plan. And then, and so I don't know if that's the actual definition or if that's the, or do we, whatever slide you have next, Traven. Okay, so, because I don't remember how the slides went on this one. So the ITP, it's the Individualized Transition Plan. It's a template for mapping out long-term adult outcomes from which annual goals and objectives are defined. A transition plan is the section of the IEP that outlines transition goals and services for the student. So when in different states, it's different ages, right? In some states, it can start as early as 14. In some states, they say it has to be started by the time the student is 16, right? So there's this like squishy language about when do we start it. And I always tell parents, go in and start talking about it in the IEP when your child is 12, 13. And say, yeah, so are we getting ready for that ITP? And they will go, what? No, that's when that has to, when they're 16. And then, you can say, well, it has to be done by the time we're 16, but we don't start assignments the night before, right? Like teachers understand that kind of thinking. Educators understand that kind of thinking. So you start to plan out what your child is going to do. Now let's take a look at what our working definition is, because you can see that this is going to be something that's going to be really important if you guys have tweens, teens, or adults. So the ITP, Individual Transition Plan, is a written plan which outlines what a student will need to live, work, and play as an adult. It should be written at least 4 years before someone is leaving school. Now that's the ideal, right? So if you plan for your child to exit the education system at the age of 18 and go on to something else, then you want to work backwards so that this starts to be in place when they're 14. If you think that your student is going to be there until they're 21, then really, you could be looking at it when you're 16. But this is why I say it's better to start it earlier. And notice those categories that technically on the ITP, it says that they have to address 3 things, and they are where they're going to live, where they're going to work, and what their social construct will be. So for all of you who have been really concerned as your child is getting older and you're like, well, school is not taking care of the social piece. And schools will hide under that and say, oh, we don't have to. We have to take care of the educational goals. That's not exactly true. In IDEA, it says that they have to take care of the child so that they can have a productive life. And they are legally mandated to have an ITP, and the ITP says it has to address where they're going to live, where they're going to work, and what their social, support system is going to be. So saying, oh, we only take care of educational goals, right? Not the thing. Wrong answer. But you will see that schools are not trained in this. They're not versed in it. They're not going to run to you and go, oh, well, we have to get the ITP together. It really is going to have to be driven by parents. And that sometimes by this age, there are individuals who are taking care of their own IEP, and they can do this for themselves, to advocate for themselves, not do the whole thing for themselves. So this is going to be really important for our guests today. But imagine, for all the things that you've been working about, did you know that your child is supposed to, through your school system, have a plan that addresses these things? I didn't know until somebody told me. So now I've told you. Look at that. Now you go tell 2 people and we'll conquer the world. So the guest that we have for you today, I'm super, super excited because, as I said, Eustacia Cutler said you've got to have this woman on the show. Sally Burton-Hoyle is with us, and she is an associate professor at Eastern Michigan University, which is a member, and she is a former member of the Autism Coordinating Committee, the IACC. And I don't know if we'll have time to talk to her about that. But if she's able to join us right now, what we really want to talk to her about is the college support program, and specifically what that is like at Eastern Michigan University, because this is how more and more across the country, universities have made a plan, have made a roadmap to help our students transition successfully to college and complete college. So there she is, Sally Burton-Hoyle. How are you?
Fine. How are you all?
I'm so excited that you have sound and can hear us. That's a really remarkable thing.
I worked on that.
You did well. You had a plan.
Good.
We've already been talking this morning about how important it is to have a plan. And and I that's part of the reason why we wanted to have you come and be on the show. And I've said that Eustacia Cutler is the person. You come with great credentials. She's the person.
Yes, right.
Have Sally on. So Sally, tell us a little bit about what you do.
What I do, I'm a professor at Eastern Michigan University and had started our grad program in autism and our undergrad program in autism. But with college supports, along with Dr. Pamela Lemerand in 2010, we envisioned having a college support program for college students that could get into college. But as we know, the success rate for lots of students on the spectrum, no matter how brilliant they are, no matter how high their test scores are, that they simply haven't done as well as their potential indicated that they should. So we started this program with the idea that we would, within the university, as part of the university, be able to foster relationships with departments and administration and housing and all those kinds of people so that we could make it a more comfortable arena, but also to provide those specific academic and social supports which act as the barrier for students on the spectrum.
Yeah, we do a jargon of the day, and our jargon today was the individual transition plan.
Okay.
And we were talking about those 3 elements that it's supposed to plan for, that, to help a person with where they're going to live, where they're going to work, which work can be, a lot of different things, and their social construct. And so it seems like to me what you guys have done is said, okay, we're going to take this person to college and we're going to help them on all 3 of those things.
Right. Navigate all of those areas. It isn't, and it has to be individualized. So, because each student needs and desires the same, different things.
Well, that was going to be my next thing, is that while it's a program, you guys make a point of celebrating the individual. Is that correct?
Yes, it is all about the individual and their strengths. It is a strengths-based program. And, you know, when you go to college, there are these horrible gen ed classes that you have to take, that everybody has to take. And those are kind of difficult. So we want to make sure students are reminded of what their strength is. And that can carry them through to a degree and to a career. I want to give an example of a young man who, like many of our people in our community, loved Thomas the Tank and, you know, Thomas the Train. And so as he was in college, a history major, I helped get him an internship after his junior year at the Henry Ford Museum. And he worked with the archivist on the trains. And they even have a Thomas train, you know, an authentic Thomas the Tank train that comes to the museum. And so he was able to work on that. But what they did there too is they really enjoyed that they want strengths. And so they used him to find out what is it that they can be doing more for people on the spectrum.
I love that. I mean, I think there are a lot of parents around the world right now whose heads just went, right? Because I think people tend to put kids into categories and go, well, these kinds of kids can go to college and these kinds of kids can't go to college. And if you were obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine, we don't think you're in that category. And you just opened up a lot of people's imaginations. Who do you think is right to go to college?
I think that, first of all, anybody can be right, but having been in this, I was director of the Autism Society of Michigan prior to my university position. So I've worked with families forever and ever. And it's a journey, as we all know. I had a brother on the spectrum. It's a journey. So it's like, I always, you know, some people are ready to go to college. And some people are not. And so first of all, you have to get into college, you know, so you have to have whatever that the requirements are for the university you want to go to. But you also then have to have some level of maturity and understanding that you need to follow like the constructs of the program. You know, we've set it up so that it's all individualized and it's flexible. However, there are certain things you have to do. For instance, you got to go to class.
Yeah.
You've got to take a shower, you know, two important things.
Yeah. You know, it seems like one of those duh things, but, you know, I used to teach college professor here, and I can't tell everybody the amount of times that I had to explain to somebody, if you don't want to be here, if you don't want to go to classes, then you should not be here. But part of being here is going to classes. It's very confusing for a lot of college students. And I'm not talking about individuals who were on the spectrum. You know, there are a lot of people who get there and go, oh, this is a world. And it is.
Yes.
And they get confused about, I think I'm supposed to be going to hockey games, not class.
Right. And as we know how big the spectrum is, there are some students who want to be social, who want to, you know, do all kinds of things. And then there are others that don't. So we let each student define community in the way that makes sense to them. You know, one of our students that just graduated, I bet the first year, you know, we went to his room on a daily basis and made sure he got to class. But sometimes it was me beating on the door and like it was the police there or something saying, you know, get up, put your pants on, you know, let's go to class. And now he doesn't want to leave college because it was like his third year when he figured out, oh, well, this is kind of fun to go do these things. So, you know, and when I work with families and we have an interview process, you know, when they have to be admitted to Eastern Michigan University first, and then they apply to us. And then we interview the student separate from the parents, because sometimes the student will say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at all. The parents are going, yes, they do. But if the student doesn't want to be there, it's not successful. But another point is the differing levels of maturity for anybody that's an 18-year-old young man. right? Raising 3 boys, everybody had a different level of readiness for college. And that's why community colleges are amazing and awesome, because you can go, I work with families, say just like take one class. Get your driver's license if that's a possibility. Get a job. Life is long, right?
Yes.
The journey and then maybe they finish. Our best students have been those that finished a community college degree, and then they come in and they're like, okay, well, they kind of understand that and we, as we all know, autism, to listen to a lecture, sometimes kids think, oh, they're having a conversation with me. And so with students that haven't had prior college experience, they might just then answer. They interrupt all the time, but they're not interrupting. It's just that they see that the professor's chatting with them and not the group of 40 or 50 or 100 or whatever.
So I want to back up on some of the things that you just said there, because I was going to say, is it possible for someone to go to community college and then transfer? But you were just saying that that's like your best case scenario.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That is really, really great. Yeah.
Okay.
I recommend that.
Okay. Very cool. Well, that's a good thing to know. So when we had spoken the other day, one of the things I know that I started the conversation thinking, I don't think that my son needs the thing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of the conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, I think my son needs the thing that you do.
Yeah.
So I would love it if you could talk a little bit about what kinds of things, challenges that students might have, because it's a wide variety of things on a college campus that end up being to their detriment that you guys can help with.
Right. And some of the, again, if you don't continue to focus on strengths, students can get lost in that. Why am I taking this class? Why do I have to take this speech class? I don't like to talk, all that sort of thing. And so what it is we do for each student is I'm faculty advisor. So when the student gets admitted to our program, we help the family make sure the student gets his letters of accommodation with the Disability Resource Center, of which has to be in any college that takes any federal funding. And that means that any students that take FAFSA, then that's when that counts. Because sometimes people say, oh, my kid's in a private school. If anybody gets FAFSA, then they have to follow the ADA, Section 504, the Rehab Act, and provide accommodations. I make sure.
But hold up for 1 second, because there are people who are watching who have kids that are in like 3rd grade, so they don't know what a FAFSA is. So let's.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's student aid. And so it's like all the people that owe lots of money on student loans, they have filled out a federal aid. I forgot what all the initials stand for, but it's student aid for college students.
Okay. So if your child is in a public school or private school, if they've filled out that FAFSA form, they are entitled to be covered by the Americans with Disability Act, and they can get accommodations during their college. Now, here's an important thing, because if you have not conserved your students, if your child is 18 years old and you didn't conserve, if you're just sending them off to college, then they have to do that entirely for themselves.
Exactly.
And you don't get a say as a parent. You don't get to call the professor and go, hey, he turned that in. The professor will go, I don't talk to you.
Right.
But if they're in the college support program, does the family get to participate or no?
The family participation is a huge part in this program. And having grown up with people with autism, I am not ever about to say, oh, your kid's here now, they're mine. No. It is that the family is the expert on the child, right? So, it's kind of like heavy freshman year, especially for semester freshman year, we're going to work and try to problem solve with the student. But sometimes there's going to be just where it's like, no, let's ask your mom and dad. So we do lots of FaceTime meetings. We meet with the student once a week, and with some students who require, we all know kids and their moms too, that's a close relationship. So there are many, many moms who speak with us on a regular basis, and it happens as much as it needs to happen. I have never seen where it goes past maybe the first year and a half. After that, when we contact them, you know, and I'm always the first one, is like, have you called the parents? Because if we're, you know, experiencing some difficulty with the student behaviorally or something like that, or talking too much or in class, or, you know, not getting along with their mentors. Each student has a mentor that goes to class with them. And when it is they, you know, data has shown that they don't need anybody to go to class with them. And usually that's maybe after year one, then they go on their own and we do a check-in, check-out system where they come in the office, and we, you know, there's a form that they fill out that makes them keep track of what's happening in the class. And so then what happens after a year, and they can do that on their own, then we, you know, transition them out even more for independence. But we still do you know, weekly meetings. Each student has a college academic support coach. So they meet with them, and that then students using their Google Calendar, all things are accounted for. How are they getting along with mentors? And then that mentor or that coach then also might, you know, check with the professors. What I do as faculty advisor is I work with all the faculty, and I do trainings in lots of different departments. And the beautiful thing about colleges and universities is there are many professors who might be on the spectrum. And so there's a lot of understanding. And I'm going to give some initials here. So like a little,
okay, we'll get ready.
FERPA, F-E-R-P-A, and you referred to it a minute ago, and it's Federal Educational Rights Privacy Act. So when a student is 18, just as you said, when they go to college, as parents, they cannot call. Well, in the college support program, we have students, that's part of it's a requirement, they have to waive the FERPA, so that then I can talk to the professors, and then I can convey all the information to parents, because we don't want to put that on parents, because that's, I mean, you know, as a professor as well too, it's like not anything, it's like you're busy enough, you know, but yeah. Because we're there within context, then I can meet with the professor. And one of the main things that I do at the beginning of the year, I go around to all, you know, 100 plus, and luckily some of them have had our students before, and I make sure they understand the legal accommodations. So if you were not in our college support program and you do not have FERPA waived, then it is upon the student to go up to each professor and say, I need these accommodations. And in college support program, I handle all that. So that then, you know, and again, the transition, we want students, it's important that they learned how to state what their needs are going to be. But the main reason for that is because when they get a job, they, at any point in the job interview or upon acceptance, they need to tell somebody that they would need accommodations.
Yeah.
So we want students to understand that, but it's difficult for most people to then go up to the professor and say, hey, you have to do this. You have to give me my test in a separate room and things like that. So I handle all that part.
Yeah, I mean, I think parents are pretty savvy too. They've seen, you know, when the IEP, you go through the whole machination to get the IEP right, but then there's this whole thing about, does it get carried out correctly, right? And there are all these little adjustments that parents have to do, and they're calling and they're like, well, no, because the IEP says this. And then there's this gaping hole. The structure is still there for college, but you really have to be an advocate to be able to, for yourself, to be able to access it correctly, and to throw somebody into that cold pool as a freshman and hope that they're going to get it right is a big, big ask. I love, one of our viewers wrote in and said, part of the problem with the way our academia is that they expect one to learn a subject in just a few short months. And not only that, you have people who need accommodations, and those are not always met. But what I see this college support program is doing is casting the net around everything so that nothing falls out. Which is pretty amazing. So, but again, because we got a little sidetracked, but it was good sidetrack. But talk about some of the things, because I think we all forget that we've seen a lot of individuals go off to college with great intentions, spending a great deal of money. Everybody's hopes are high, and then it doesn't turn out well. What are
Right.
some of the things that can mess somebody up? Yeah.
The one thing,
Long list.
difficult thing for families to understand, but it's an important one, is that when you have a child with autism, there's usually not just autism, and they might not have displayed significant anxiety or depression or things like that. But neurologically, about college time is when some of those things might occur. Plus, they're not at home. They're in the dorm, they've got, different teachers, and they switch every semester, and all these things that are like, when we're in the autism world. And so the coexisting disorders, somebody having depression, and one of the things that I train and all our mentors and all our staff to understand is that behavior is communication. And so if you've got a student who doesn't, you go to get him and he isn't going to go to class, and he starts talking very, very loudly about the steam engine's going to rise. There's going to be rise of the steam engine, talking very loudly. And what that means, what that behavior is communicating, is that, whoa, I am so, overdone. I don't know, I'm behind in my work, all these kinds of things. So we have to kind of interpret that. Now, if we can't get our way out of that, then we do talk to families right away and encourage them to get some clinical support, because we're not a residential hospital program or anything like that. We are a college support program. So I would say that the coexisting disorders, you have to understand that they are there. We've had students that, on a Saturday, for instance, a young man had a seizure. And as we know, seizures don't always look like seizures. This was a student walking around in circles and saying things from a movie, repeating things from a movie. And so the library staff at the university just called, the security, for the university, who then they took him to the psychiatric ward. And those are the kinds of things that, we're with them. We have study tables 7 days a week. We have pretty much daily contact, but there are going to be times when they are out, they're out on their own, like any college student. So I would say that really understanding how your kid shows anxiety and what that could rise to is important for any family to know.
Absolutely. We got a couple of people doing shout outs here. Somebody says it's always great. Always a pleasure to listen to Sally. Always provides such great insight. And they're saying hello to you from ASLA.
Okay. Yes.
So what a wonderful thing.
My buddies.
And other people who are saying, yay, CSP. Because people should understand that you guys have been doing this for a little while and you got a great track record.
Right.
So how long?
Well, we started in 2010, and we started with one student, and that's with Dr. Pamela Lemerand and we are the ones who started that, and she's retired and in California, so maybe she's even listening there. But we started with one student because we thought, let's get it right with one student. And this was a student who was had the diagnosis of mutism, because he couldn't, he would get anxious and then not be able to talk at all. We started with him, and the accommodations that we used with him were life-changing, in that, if you can't give a speech in front of the class, the professor could let you give the speech in their office. Okay, so we learned lots. We get smarter every day, right? Because every student is different. Every person on the spectrum is so different. So we started 2010 with one student, and we now have 33 students. So we have gone up slowly. We do not get any support from the university. It's all, it's parent fees. This is a fee-based program. So students pay their tuition and all that kind of stuff, plus then our program.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. First, you have to apply to the college, and we should say that your college is not the only college that does a program like this.
That's exactly.
How many universities around the country do this? It's not a huge number, but it's not two.
It's growing and growing and growing, because I would say there's probably 50, and I would say every family needs to approach the university of their choice in their area and say, what kind of specific college supports do you hold for students with autism? Because there can be some that, like one of the first ones was Marshall University, Western Kentucky. Rutgers has one that I've heard is very good. So there are many programs that have just, Mercyhurst in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of them, and each of them kind of have their own thing. Ours is individualized. So we have students, encourage them to live, to get a medical accommodation and have a room by themselves, because students need to be able to take on the social world as they can, not like, oh, let's get you a roommate. And I think any of us can think about nightmares that we had with horrible roommates, and that's not the way to start college. So we have them get a medical accommodation, then they have their own room, they can take on, whatever they need to take on. And then some then learn how to really, associate with other kids in their dorms and participate in activities and things like that. So, it's individualized. So that the student that we go knock on their door and we provide socials that the students come up with a couple times a month. And many of them want to go because they're going to take the Uber to downtown Ann Arbor and get pizza and things like that. And then there are some, and we all know people on the spectrum that would rather die than be associated with anybody else with autism. That's okay too. That's okay too. So social can be things that you create yourselves. Is there a Dungeons and Dragons club on campus? So we go with you and we help get you set up. We have students in fraternities and in sororities, because that was really important to them. And then because of the FERPA, then waived, meaning that we can talk to people, then we have a relationship with the Panhellenic Society, so that we've given trainings regularly and fraternities about what autism looks like. So that's been very exciting, because then we talk, it's May now, it's not Autism Awareness Month anymore, but we all know that the more people understand who people are on the spectrum, the more acceptance there's going to be. So
absolutely. So the first thing they have to do is to identify the colleges that they want to go to and see if they have a program, reach out to them. And then they have to apply to the college and get in.
Well, yeah, for hours, yes. Yeah,
okay. So you get into the college, and then you apply to be in the college support program.
Right. Yes.
And for your program, that involves at least an interview with the family.
Yes.
Where you outline all the different things, because you've already gone through a bunch of things, that there's a social program, that there's a study group, that there's somebody who goes to class with you.
Yes.
What does that person who goes to class with you do?
That student, that's another undergraduate, an upper level undergraduate, and they sit and as close or as far away as needed by the student in class, and the professor knows that this is a student that's in there to support the other person, but no mention of it is ever made.
Yeah, they're not wearing a T-shirt that says I'm with him or her. They're not waving and going, I'm an aide. They look like another student, and they're in there taking notes, right?
They are other students, and we don't hire that are not students. And so then they take notes because auditory processing is the weakest link when you're on the spectrum, right? So taking notes and then dealing with sarcasm. If you think of every single criteria in the DSM or autism definitions in education, not understanding sarcasm. So, what if a person raised their hand and says, well, are you going to cover this on the test? And the professor very sarcastically says, oh, of course not. Why would we put that in? And for the student who is taking their own notes, they would go, oh, okay, I don't need to study that. Whereas we've got a mentor in there that says, no, that means. So they're there as social coaches to kind of interpret and navigate the world with them. So if a student needs to talk to the professor, then the mentor might work with them and say, hey, what are you going to say? And then maybe they come up with a script, or they kind of act as wingmen. All right, I see you really staring at that one particular person. Do you want to get to meet them? And then they might brainstorm with them how it is they get to meet them. So and it's all right on the spot. So it's all happening. The support is right then and there. If a student, let's say, is picking their nose in class, the mentor might text them and say, use a Kleenex and don't pick your nose. I mean, so it's like it's handled right then and there. And then work with the faculty and they let me know if there's a mentor that isn't doing a good job. So
yeah, what I love is that there's lots of points of communication.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, I mean, even just, I have a high schooler and I send him off to school, and if nobody tells me what's happening, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Right. And I always hate it when after the fact somebody says, well, we struggled with this. Really? And I didn't know. Like, I could have done something. Right. You could have done something. I could have told you to do something. Right. So communication is key, and you've got several different points. Okay. Yeah. So they apply to the college, they get in, they apply to the college support program. They come and they interview to see if they're a good fit. What kinds of things are you looking for the right fit?
We're looking for the student's ability to follow what the program is. And how that turns out is study tables, so it's like, will you go to a study table? Now, and we individualize the study tables. Maybe they check in and then they go and they're going to work with their professor, and the mentor heads over there with them. So maybe they don't have to sit in the same room with us, but there are approximately 12 to 15 hours a week that students need to be in study tables. And we have study tables 7 days a week. So we try to, within their Google Calendar and their academic support coach, work that in so that it works with the student. If a student needs to eat first, if they don't want to eat until noon or whatever it is, that all is worked out according to what works with the students.
So it's a big time commitment on their part. They have to go to their classes, and then they have to go to the study tables.
Right.
And they can't try to do the executive plan and go, well, I'll just go to some of it, some of the time. Right. That's not allowed.
Right. Well, and, one of the things is that, we tell the students, like, hey, dude, if you're sick and you need to stay in bed, text us and let us know. That's what you're doing, because then, we would let the mentor know. Because usually how it goes is the mentor has an arranged meeting place with the student. At the beginning of the year, they might go to the dorm and wait in the lobby and walk over with them if the student will allow that, needs and doesn't mind that. And after that, it might be that maybe they're waiting outside the classroom. But then maybe they're in the classroom. Well, let's say it's 10 minutes into the class, 15 minutes into the class, and there's no student there. For health and safety, the student then will text us and say, hey, so-and-so isn't here. And then we will, we'll say, all right, go and check their dorm room. And then worst case, and this has only happened 2 times in all the years I've done this, we've had to have police come do wellness check. And generally that was because of a student's abuse of technology, meaning they were playing video games until 5 a.m. and then they overslept and they couldn't wake up. So the technology part is a huge thing. And that's next to coexisting disorders and psychiatric issues, that technology, that's something that families, as their kids are in high school, begin teaching them how to, at bedtime, check it in.
Disengage. Yeah,
Disengage.
It's hard. I'll tell you, this COVID stuff is not helping that, because we're having to lean into the technology. And I know it's very squishy for me. I'm trying to check, are you playing a video game, or are you in class? Or are you playing a video game while you're in class? Right. No, my head has not exploded once this week. No, that didn't happen. But, my husband and I are reminded on a regular basis, the checking in thing. And it's been scary to me to think that, we're only a year and a half away from him going to college, and who will be checking in then? Right, and that's part of why I love this whole college support program.
And that's why we came up with it.
Yeah, because it makes sense. And I gotta say that this probably would be good for every student, right?
Yeah, right.
But how nice that it's there for our kiddos on the spectrum. But you mentioned that it's an additional cost. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's fee-based, and why we do the interviews is that if we see, yes, you're able to follow the program, we don't expect anybody to be perfect, but can they follow the program? Then we come up with a support plan, and the costs range from $4,000 to $8,000 a semester at this point. So,
and a large portion of that is paying for that person to be in the classroom taking the notes for them, right? That person has to be paid.
That is exactly right. That is exactly right.
And my understanding, and everybody hold on to your pearls for a second, is that it's not something that there is funding for in generally.
I want to say that in vocational rehab across the country, there is money targeted for students' support for college. Now, you have to word that in a very, very careful way. But we have students from several states, and one particular is at the District of Columbia. They pay, their voc rehab pays for air flights home, books, the college support program, and a portion of tuition. There are others, I think in Illinois, where they might help with tuition. So there is support. So go get your case open with your rehab services. And in California with your, probably with your regional center as well, because I know that's a conduit from some of the things that I've done there in California.
Okay, wonderful. But it is a commitment financially. It's an additional cost. College is already expensive.
Right.
Because I want us to be realistic about this. And I gotta say, too, I don't know that anybody has ever applied for this through a charity that I work through, but you could through Autism Care Today.
Yeah,
you could absolutely apply for a grant for this kind of thing through Autism Care Today. You can go to act-today.org. Learn more about that. But it's one of those things where people go, well, I don't want to spend between $4,000 and $9,000 extra a year for college. But if you're going to spend $20,000, $40,000 to send them, you'll want them to come out with a degree, be well-adjusted, educated, happy people.
Right.
And if it's if it's $4,000 to $9,000 more to make that, it's good money, is what the point that I'm trying to make.
It is money.
Yes, I had a small heart attack thinking about it, going, gee, that's not in the budget myself.
Right.
But I can see where we would want it to. A parent wrote in and said, nice to hear our kiddos will have support if they choose college. Hopefully this will help and will trickle down to the grade school levels. I just want to say you should already be having this kind of support at the grade school level. And if you're not, write to me because the thing that we're always thinking is let's get that to trickle up to the college because the support is supposed to be there for, and if you're not getting that, let's have another conversation about that. And somebody else said this is very helpful for group projects and for vague assignments on a long deadline.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the student will get an assignment at the first day of class that says they have a 40-page term paper on a specific area with 25 peer-reviewed references. What the important part about how we approach things is that they go to their study table on a daily basis. We have record of kind of what it is their assignment is, and we can work with them on a daily basis there and then break things down. Most of the students in our program, I don't care how brilliant they are, cannot break down an assignment. So we try to break it into chunks, which is something, we work on with kids all the way through, from grade school on up through high school. But it's really important that the students then accomplish a goal every week. Then that is also then the academic support coach then is knowledge of what that project is. And then at the weekly meeting might talk about that too. Now, where are you on this? And one of the terms we use lots is being respectfully assertive with, because we all know our students who are really good at saying, oh, I got this. Oh, I don't know. Don't worry about it. And some of our students have tried to dismiss the mentors and say, you don't really need to come with me. And then they're so convincing, the mentors will say, well, I left because I thought I didn't need to. No. You work for the program. You don't work for the kid necessarily. So that the student then can, we can say, all right, where are you in this project? Oh, it's back at my dorm. Okay, let's walk over and get it. Or why don't you show me where you are, just so I can see kind of where you are. That's really important, because if you don't do that, students will fall through the cracks.
And it happens every day. So you brought up with the mentors, like talk a little bit about what's the process. What do you train them, and who do they, I assume that they have to interview. What kind of people do you pick for those jobs?
Well, we pick, because we have students that are majoring in everything. We've got them in computer science, and animation and gaming is one that lots of times people start out in, but it is very difficult. So they don't stay in it very long, whatever it is. So we try to get students with content, with, strong content in computer science and math and different things like that. But we've hired a lot of students through my students that are in the autism undergrad or graduate program. It's really important. They get training twice a month. And it's really important that the tenets of autism, it's like an autism 101 we're doing many, many times. And it kind of goes back to that people think, well, if they can talk, then they don't have autism. Oh, they're so bright, they're so high functioning. Well, no, none of that matters, because you have to understand and be able to understand the behaviors, communication, and how to help the student with their need sometimes to just like say something like, one student told the professor, you sound just like a character from the Muppets, and it's like the professor then was like, oh, okay. And then he called me about it, and I just said, well, okay, well, and then that's what the mentor is there for. The mentors are, we go through an extreme interview process and then training and all that sort of thing. And we work that whole business around their schedules so that nothing interferes ever. Another thing I want to say too is that we're very proud of is that we've been getting many of our students in the program jobs on campus. There's some food service jobs and things, and so many social skills are learned in that environment. And
the mentors also help with that, with the work situation? Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we help with all of it. And then, the idea too, especially with job, is that then things take over. And then that's where, I've done trainings with the cafeteria workers and some of the different fast food chains that are within the student center. So that then they're going to go, oh, okay, all right. No, Joel, you can't do that. So they learn how to not pussyfoot around with the student, but to then say, well, you need to do this directly.
But if you see that the student is doing well and they want some more autonomy, and you give them the ability to try to slowly go out on their own?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we all know autism isn't linear. So we've had students that their first year they had a mentor with them in every class. The second year they had a mentor with them in every class. And we start taking data on the mentor isn't having to do as much because the student is taking their own notes and making appointments with the professor and things like that. So then maybe that first semester of the next year, then we just have a check-in system. And then because autism isn't linear, it doesn't mean then it's going to stay that way. So that then maybe if things get bad and anxiety and depression and things like that pop up, then we're there to jump right back in.
And you're paying each person, it's an individual program, and each person pays for the services that they're actually using.
Right.
So if by the time they're a senior, they're not using anything more than the check-in, all you're paying for is the check-in.
Right. We start off with, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a pick and choose thing at the beginning, because parents, oh, my student, because I cannot tell you, I was laughing with family last week in our end of the year meetings who was sure his student would not need ever anybody in class with them. And he was laughing, goes, oh yeah, sorry, I was such a skeptic, because he did need that. Now by his last year, he didn't need that. So then dorm checks, we do residential support. So we're in there once a week. But then it's like, no, we go in and there's perfect. One time we found out it was perfect, and we had a student that the family had hired a maid service. And yeah, that's the kind of money I don't understand, but anyway.
Well, there we go. All right, we are unfortunately out of time, but I want to really quickly talk about where can people go if they want to learn more about Eastern Michigan University and the CSP program there.
Okay, well, they can go to the Eastern Michigan University website, or they could go to email me, sburtonh@emich.edu. And I'm happy to direct people. We've got an office, and it's in the college, located in the College of Education, and so I have my hand in all things. So you can email me. I'll get you hooked.
And if you're wanting to know more universities that have this program, what's the best thing to Google?
Well, I would say Google college programs autism, because that's where you're going to get a list. And we have many families that have used that list to go and interview different places.
And we should say everybody does it a little bit different, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so don't assume that because Sally's program does it the way we just talked about, you got to do some research if you're going to do it at a different university.
Right.
But don't we all want our kids to go to Eastern Michigan now? Sally, you did not disappoint. You lived up to all of Eustatia's praise, which is a very high thing. This has been so enjoyable, so informative. Thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, thank you, and hi to everybody that was watching me.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're way out of time here, but I just want to say to you guys, don't forget that on Thursday, we're doing that town hall meeting. I'm about to put a bunch of press out about it today with Bonnie Yates, special education attorney. We're going to talk about the state of special education. If you've been in that place where you're like, I don't think my child is getting what the education that I thought they were going to get this semester because of COVID, this is going to be something that you're going to need to want to come to. It's going to be interactive. You will be able to ask questions. She's got important information about updates about what Betsy DeVos has said about education that is now going to be important to us. So you're going to want to tune in. It's going to be at 4:00 Pacific time. So it's in the afternoon on Thursday. Clear your schedule because you're going to want to be there. And tomorrow on the show, I believe we're not having Dr. Grant Pichet. I believe that we're having Evelyn Kung answer your questions, but I'm not 100% sure. Tune in. Someone fabulous will be here answering your questions. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We are coming to you live from a room in my house. And we're going to be coming to you live from rooms in several people's houses. Thrilled to be here with you on this Wednesday morning. I can't tell you how much it means to me to be able to have this time with you. It's very dear to my heart. Thrilled that you guys are here. We're going to be with you live for the next hour. Now, you know that on Wednesdays, we love to welcome Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, and oh my gosh, she's brilliant, right? And some days we just don't get to have her because some days the world needs her more than we do. And we, especially when it's a kiddo or something, we have to be willing to let her go to that, right? But when we're lucky, when she's not here, we have another brilliant mind who can fill in for us, and that is Evelyn Kung. And we are lucky today, aren't we, Grand? So Evelyn Kung is joining us right now. And Evelyn, tell them what you do, Evelyn, because you do so many things on any given day that I lose track. What is your what's your current title? But you do a lot of things. But you are muted. You are muted. There you go.
There I am. Okay. Yeah, I actually don't know what my current title is, but the last 10 years I've been the clinical director at CARD, and we've grown so fast that, just things are shuffling. So majority of my job, half of my job is still my favorite, which is still seeing patients and helping supervisors who either want to troubleshoot or have a problem where they're not sure where to go, or if there's a parent who has a very unique concern or a patient who has a very unique concern, then I jump in and I help the supervisors, do some problem solving. And then the other half of my job is taking care of skills and being, adding content to training and things like that. So it's a lot of different things.
You are someone that we all run to for advice all the time. I mean, I do, and I know a lot of other people who do, because when all else fails, it's like, well, ask Evelyn. Evelyn will know, and often Evelyn does. And we all adore you, and you just bring a calm presence across everything. But a lot has changed and been changing in the world, if not everywhere else. So I appreciate you saying, I don't know what my title is anymore, because right now it feels like during this COVID emergency, we all have taken on other tasks. I am a graphic designer now, and I never planned to be a graphic designer, but I'm a graphic designer right now. So if you were looking at some of the graphics that we put out and you're like, who did that? That would be me. That would be me in the late hours and the early mornings making so everybody's been pressed into service wherever you can.
Exactly.
It's all hands on deck. So I appreciate that you are two of the most capable hands on deck. So thank you so much for being with us. I do want to say that Evelyn is going to be with us for this hour live, and she's going to be answering questions. You guys can be writing in a lot of different places. You already have been, but for those of you who are new, and we have new viewers every day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We want to tell you some of the different places where you can watch the show and some of the places where you can ask a question. The first question that was written in a couple of hours this morning, somebody wrote it and said, can you please tell us again when we're live? Well, I can do that, but hopefully you're watching the live show to be able to do that. We are live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time. Now, so if you do the math for whatever time zone you are in the world, but it's 10 a.m. Pacific time, Monday through Friday, that we are live. I also want to tell you that you can be watching the live show on our homepage, autism-live.com. Lots of things to do on that page. You can chat with us for free, anonymously on that page. You can check out our previous toy guides. You can search 9 years of videos that we've done, all kinds of things that you can do there, right? But it's not the only place that you can watch us. We have our own YouTube channel. We are on Facebook Live. We have a Facebook page, and we're on Facebook Live. We are also on Twitter and Periscope. All of those live, all of those you can interact with us. Now, after the show, I'm back. Oh, technical difficulties. And there's Evelyn. Because it's Wednesday, and we've been having technical difficulties on Wednesdays. So there we go. I apologize, you guys. As I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by my computer crashing. We encourage you guys to be writing into us, ask us your questions. We are here. Evelyn is here to answer your questions. We do have to give you the disclaimer that as brilliant as Evelyn is, she cannot answer questions that are child specific, individual specific. No one could in this format. So write in, be as specific as possible. Make sure to include information about the closest major city to you so that we can know what resources might be available to you. And be specific, but know that she's going to give you information of a general nature so that you can go back to the expert who has eyes on the situation to get individual specific advice. Sound good? Sorry about that, Evelyn. Did I give you a minor heart attack? I had a minor heart attack myself. Nothing like inviting you to be on a show and then having the host go, bye-bye, spontaneously. Okay, all part of what we do. I want to start with the first question, and go ahead, you guys be writing in. We want to hear from you. I was wondering if there was ever a time that telehealth would not be recommended for ABA. I have one client who is having a lot of difficulty focusing and responding to instructions over the screen. Parents are not available to join the session. Is it better to keep doing sessions and focusing on only one goal, for example? Or would it be more beneficial to take a break for now? Thank you so much for a great show. And thank you for that great question. Maybe we should start with, there are people who don't know what telehealth for ABA looks like. And some people don't know that that is available to almost everyone who gets ABA services. It's not everyone, but almost everyone. So Evelyn, do you want to tell them a little bit about what it looks like?
Yeah, sure. So telehealth is so new to all of us in this new COVID environment. We've all had to adapt very quickly. There's people at CARD, including myself, who have done telehealth sessions previous to this time. It's usually for people who were in different countries. And, you know, they wanted some, either to continue a service because somebody moved back to the US or some other process, or for like myself, I would travel and then they would want me to see, and, you know, I'd do some probing. So we had a little bit of experience, but we hadn't had a lot. But with COVID-19 and all the majority of the insurers being willing to fund this, we actually had to, you know, jumpstart and really get this together, because this is considered a medically necessary treatment. And if the kids don't get it, there is going to be a consequence. Whether you see it now or you see it later, there is going to be a consequence. And it's been long enough now where I've actually been able to see what's happened to some of the kids who haven't received services, or who have received much fewer decrease in services. And so in my opinion, I think that if you can get a child to do any task via telehealth, you're going to try. Okay. The ones that we've recommended not are the ones who engage in severe challenging behaviors. You know, if there's severe aggression and they're going to throw the computer at someone, probably not. But for the most part, if the child's able to sit there and be compliant enough, if their attention isn't going away and they can't focus, start small. Use your ABA techniques. What you do is you start with one simple task. You start for a short time period and you build one task, then you build another and you chain it together and you start to shape the behavior of the child. You move around your reinforcement to figure out what is really needed to get the child to understand or get the child to sit there, and you build upon it. And we've been very successful. Initially, we tell families, try a 30-minute session, see how much you can get done. And if necessary, you can back up to a 15-minute session, and then 30 and an hour and 2 hours. 3-hour sessions are hard, I think, via video, but I think that a lot of times it can be done if you give them a little break in between. There's a lot of kids who they don't pay attention and it's really hard for them to focus. So you're not able to do every task that might be in their treatment plan, but you're able to do a lot. And a lot of it has to do with communication and with like the nonverbal cues people give. And because we are in this environment now where video is the life of video. Telehealth is somewhat, or telecommunication is a method of communication between, a lot of younger folks. Teenagers right now with COVID are hanging out on Zoom and watching movies together. So it's a great place to start to build, because this is going to be a communication source of the future. It is now, but may not be for the rest of us that didn't have this growing up. So for me, if you can get something done, continue, keep trying, but just be very methodical. Use all your behavior analytics skills in terms of breaking down the behavior and then chaining things together and shaping the other child's behavior also.
Thank you so much for that. I have been always in awe of CARD in the way that they have been able to present different modalities of ABA. I had the benefit of having wonderful therapists in my home. It was before there was center-based, right? And I heard the stories of the families and met some of the families who were having services in South Africa and in Dubai and France and China and everywhere around the world, and heard about how they were conferencing, on the phone, and then later when there was Skype. I mean, I was just absolutely amazed and thrilled to hear the stories of the kids who were doing well. And I've always loved that CARD has been so flexible to meet each individual where they need to be met and to overcome difficulties. So when this all started to happen, it did not surprise me, but I was so proud of the response from CARD and the continued response from CARD. And I just want to say that, one of the things that that CARD has done, they don't have just one mode of telehealth. They have 3 different modes of telehealth, depending on how much support the kids need. And what I hear in that question is that the parents aren't available. And I know that is a circumstance in many families, because many people like us are working, and so it becomes a really difficult thing. But I would urge the parent to find time, whether it's during a lunch break, and I realize what I'm asking, because I know how hard it has been for me doing all, I have a husband who does help. I don't want to make it sound like he doesn't help, but I'm doing all of the ordering of the groceries. I'm doing a lot of the cooking, at least at night. He does it during the day. There's stuff to be done around the house. I mean, it isn't, I think that some people just think that this is a big vacation for everybody. And especially if you're working, it is no kind of vacation I ever want to take in my life. And then to be a person helping to facilitate your child's ABA, I appreciate that I'm asking for a big thing, but I would go back to the parents and say, I realize that you're not available during the hours we may have scheduled for this, but is there another time that you could be available? Because my thing to parents, and I really was, last night, Evelyn, I really, we got news last night here in Los Angeles County that we're all going to be asked to shelter in place for 3 more months. And it was a swift intake of breath for everyone to hear that. But a couple of, about a month ago, my son and I made a video, and I kind of have sat on it, but I can no longer sit on it. And it's a video in which we urge families, please, I'm begging you to try telehealth, and please participate in it. I feel like I do know what I'm asking and how hard that will be, but you're gonna have to trust me. The benefits so outweigh any negative, that when this is all over and said and done, I want for you to be able to have a better relationship with your child, and for your child to have a better relationship with the world. And if we are going to stay in some places sheltering in place for this many more months, you have to find the way that you can keep ABA therapy going. And if the only way you have is telehealth, I'm just going to beg you to please grab it with both hands and hang on tight. And what I hear from families, the parents who are doing this for however many hours that they're doing, they're saying, I am learning so much.
Yeah.
2 parents that said to me, I didn't know that this is what I have needed all along. Because the therapist, you're there, with the computer, and the therapist is on the computer telling you exactly what to do. You don't have to know it. You don't have to think it through. You don't have to plan. They're going to talk you through the thing. Parents, please, I beg you. Put this, please.
Yes. So we've had parents just amazed, They were the families. So we have at CARD, we have a lot of center-based services. And that's been great because we can really focus on the kids in this environment, and generalizing to home, is a part of it. But there are families who have basically taken the center-based as a place to drop my child off so I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So many of those families now that they've had to be a part of this telehealth, they're like, this is amazing. We can do this at home. And it's just, even though they've been there and they've been participating, it wasn't the same thing because they just didn't realize how much their child could do at home.
Yeah.
It's
I'm an allergy woman. And so imagine, when your child is learning a language at school and they're learning Spanish at school and they come home and they're telling you the words that they said at school, you might pick up 3 words. Right? But if you had to go to Spain with your child, you would come back with a different level of fluency. And it would be very good for you. And, none of us chose this path. But if you have a child who is on Autism Avenue, this is an opportunity for you to go there with them. And I won't lie to you. I mean, it's not like it's super, super easy, but I will tell you, and, write back to me if I'm wrong. It will end up being the most rewarding thing you ever do. And just saying.
Yeah. And I'm going to go the other end now, which I don't usually like to do. But earlier I mentioned that we've been out of therapy long enough now. We've been sheltered at home for quite a few weeks now. And I am seeing that the kids, autism, one of the innate things is the kids want to be alone. And in some ways, this shelter in place is really and reinforcing that. So I am actually afraid that at some point when we try to take the kids out again, there will be a group of kids who won't want to go out and who used to do great, going everywhere and doing school. But it is going to reinforce some of those things where they don't want to be doing things that they haven't had to do in quite a few months. And, some families have actually called me and said, everything that you told us not to do is happening because they can't go out, they can't get exposed to people, they're not forced to interact with anyone where they really have to on a consistent basis. All these things are gone, but telehealth is like the one stream where even if your child doesn't, has that inclination to not want to interact with people or to go that way of not interacting where they have in the past, that having that exposure, even if it's 1 hour at a time, it's keeping that generalization going of, yes, there are other people out there that I need to interact with, not just my home and family. Because I have had families actually call and say, hey, we're thinking about ending services now because he's doing so well over this break. And I'm on the other end saying, but there's nothing that's forcing him to change because he knows how to talk to mom and dad and siblings and knows how to be at home. It's good. The question is what's going to happen later when you start to say you have to go interact with kids who are really spontaneous and, other people out there. That is something that's going to be a question for a lot of people.
Yeah. I just keep putting it very plainly to people and saying, look, when this is over, there's only 3 options. Right? Your child will have progressed, your child will have stayed the same, or your child will have regressed. Those are the 3 options, right? And if you are not doing regular ABA, it's 100% for sure your child will have regressed. Now you'll have to make up all that your child was behind before, plus the time that they missed, plus the time that they regressed. It like gives me like a chokehold around the neck. If your child at least maintains, you've got a place to continue to grow from. And if your child progresses, woohoo, right? So we are seeing with telehealth that in the beginning, the goal is to maintain, right? But we are seeing that some children have gotten comfortable enough with the telehealth that they are progressing. But if you don't do anything, you definitely, there's no doubt about it. Scientifically, we know that the children will regress and we're already seeing it and you're seeing it. I know you guys get it. So I'm just saying, pick the things to do so that you're at least maintaining and hopefully getting to the progress, because that's the name of the game. All right. I want to go to one more question and then I'm going to start taking live questions here. But Somebody wrote this in. Good morning. I had my son's IEP Zoom meeting yesterday, but this was like 2 days ago. He is 10 years old, a little bit verbal, a high amount of scripting, about 78% when he started at the school that he is currently at. They placed him with ASD1 with abilities to write, answer some WH questions. He can dress himself, read short sentences, write and spell some sight words. For 2 years, they kept him at the same level, and the scripting increased to up to 100% according to their data. She says that I have noticed decreases because they did not apply the recommendations on the IEP for almost 2 years, and that during that time, she did not receive feedback from the speech therapist or the OT. With his ABA hours at home, however, it's a different story. Things are getting better. Our BCBA explained to them that based on the VB map, he is at a different level, but the school recommended that they should keep their son at ASD 1. She said no, because the placement has not been effective for 2 years. Please, I need some advice. What should I do? I'm planning to homeschool my son by the time I get a lawyer to fight them, and thank you. And can I just say before you answer this, Evelyn, that tomorrow night, we are having a very special town hall meeting at 4 o'clock Pacific time with special education attorney Bonnie Yates. It's an interactive town hall meeting so that you can ask questions for the legal parts of this. But there's an ABA part of this that I wanted to have you address, Evelyn. But check out on Autism Live's Facebook page to know how to get on to that meeting tomorrow with Evelyn Kung.
With Bonnie Yates.
Oh, you're Evelyn Kung. Thank you. Bonnie Yates tomorrow, special education attorney Evelyn Kung here now. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. So I have to say this part, which Bonnie will say tomorrow, is the goals drive your services. So if for 2 years your goals have stayed the same and your child has not made progress, there's definitely something wrong. And especially if now they say that his skills are going backwards, there is really something wrong. And if your BCBA at home is saying he's at another level now, the BCBA needs to share with them. And there needs to be some kind of intervention that bridges the gap between home and school. Okay. And the best way to do that would be to have your BCBA start consulting with your district or with the school, the environment, to start bringing over some of those goals, some of the things that he's learned at home need to be generalized to the school setting, need to be generalized to the teacher and to peers and everybody around, in his environment. So it's important that those goals, that there be some kind of working together where you become a team and be able to have the goal. The BCBA knows what works for him already at home. So now it's time to generalize. So it's time for her to share that. And, a lot of times BCBAs are willing to share, but maybe the schools aren't so happy to receive. And sometimes the BCBAs can be very rigid too, and don't want to compromise. So you have that issue too. So you want to collaborate. It's your son's progress. It's great that he's been making changes at home because it shows you the potential is there and he's making those changes. One of the things that I always tell people about stereotypy or scripting or any type of self-stimulatory behavior is that there are studies there that show that the more stereotypy there is, the less functional skills there are. And the higher the functional skills move, the lower the stereotypy goes, because they only have so much time in their day. So it's gonna go one way or the other. And it's usually a balance. When stereotypy is very high, functional behavior goes down. When functional behavior goes up, stereotypy goes down. And you see that movement all the time in learning. So if his stereotypy is actually increasing and his scripting is 100%, it's not a good thing. That means that at school, he's probably not forced to use any of the skills he knows how to use. Okay. So, there's a lot of, whether it's the one-on-one that's ABA trained and can bridge the gap for consistency and generalization, or whether it's training somebody at the school to understand what his baseline skills are and how to increase them, that's going to be something. But one of the things I have to say to you is kids who script and kids who can learn a lot of the skills that you mentioned have a lot of potential. So there's a big chance that if you really push this into the school setting and that generalization, he probably will be able to do a whole lot more than he's doing now. So you really want that because he's young enough where he's going to make a lot of change. And you need him to make those changes young, because it takes a while for them to take. It takes a while. They might master a skill, but doing it every day at a fluent level is a whole different skill. So you want to do this as fast as you can. And maybe school right now isn't the place for him, but if you're going to homeschool, what it shows you is that he needs a generalized environment to generalize his skills in. Because for whatever reason, he is not generalizing those skills that he's learning at home and making progress into that setting. So if you do homeschool, you need to find another social setting to bridge those skills, because right now he's not bridging them. And that is a concern for me, as like, if I'm listening to everything that you're saying, it's great that he has potential, which I want to push even more. When I see kids have this kind of potential, I'm all about parents need to know that they have the potential. And they need to know it at a level where they're going to be really willing to push it. And I know that in smaller school settings or smaller towns, it's hard when you know everybody, and it's harder to like push the agenda at the school if the principal lives next door to you, and things like that. But those are things to contend with, because your kid needs to learn it now, and there needs to be a generalization component. And, it very much shows you that if he's not bringing those skills over to the school, if you homeschool, you have to have another social environment for him to generalize to, because it's not working right now with it just at home. He's learning a lot, which is great, but it's not moving to any other environment. And in the long run, we need him to be functional across all environments with whoever is there. And that's the big goal. So, I would really encourage you, ABA wise, like, there's lots of opportunities, whether it's getting, your home therapist to be an aide at school for part of the time or all the time, whatever the BCBA recommends, or if it's training, having your BCBA train an aide, a paraprofessional at school, be able to implement, the behavior intervention plans and the skills, or whether it's just like providing consultation, that might help. There's a lot of different things get be done, but you need to collaborate with the school setting so that they can get things done. And, IEPs are, this is IEP season normally. We would have done a lot of them by now. And actually, I've done a few already via Zoom. And they are a little bit different when they're on Zoom, because not everybody gets to talk, and you can see. It's not as interactive as it would be if you were there in person. But for the most part, you can meet with them monthly and get check-ins. You have the right as a parent. You can say like, hey, I think, I can't remember what it is, but I know Bonnie will know, but you can call an IEP every 30 days if you want.
Yeah.
And so there has to be some communication on progress or lack of progress between the home and school environments.
In fact, they have a legal obligation to give you, I think it's 4 a year updates. And the fact, if you can prove that they have not given you any updates, it's like playing poker, this legal game that, and I don't mean to make light of it, because the end of the game, it's your child's education, right? But there are all these legal chess moves that have to be made. So it's like poker. And the fact that they did not give you updates, if you can prove that, that's an ace in your hand. I really want to encourage you to get legal help. You mentioned that you're talking about getting a lawyer. Your school is out of compliance. That's the phrase for it. They are out of compliance. They are not utilizing the IEP. They're not even following the letter of the law, which is that they have to give you updates. I wanted you to hear all the ABA parts of it, but I think, it's very hard to say on this much information, but it seems clear your school is out of compliance. So a lawyer is going to help you to maximize what you get out of that, which often is that you get the right program. Horrible that it has to work that way, but utilize everything that you have, and you've got a couple of aces in your deck. But by the way, she said, thank you, Evelyn, and said, thank you for this wonderful show.
Good.
I'm glad that we had an opportunity to talk about that. Okay, another person says, my son has motivational issues when it comes to teach him. I use a reinforcer like pieces of cornbread, but after I give him the reinforcer, he asks for a break. He is 6. He asks for the break a lot, every 2 words that we practice. So what would you like to say about that, Ellen?
You definitely need what we call a reinforcement inventory. You can't depend on just one reinforcer for any child out there. You need a whole range, and you need to know what's the strongest reinforcer, what's the middle level, and what might get by, and you need to take in situations where with food, you can't satiate on it. Okay, because the minute if he gets all of the cornbread right away and he's done, there's nothing to work for anymore. When I used to be a therapist, we used to laugh because we used to take, like, you know, the mini M&Ms, and I'd have parents cut the mini M&Ms in half. Look at me like, really?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because I need him to work as much as he can, and I need as many trials to happen as fast as possible. So yeah, we're gonna split these mini M&Ms into 2 pieces. You know, like right now, this is what we're not gonna do it forever, but until he figures out that getting things right is reinforcing in itself, we need supplementary material, and we need a lot of it. So the kids that like music, you know, the beginning of The Lion King, when Mufasa, that first, like, I used to make for a kid go 3 hours for each part of just the beginning. And then at the very end of the session, he could hear the whole song.
That's awesome.
And the parents would just, initially they'd be like, what are you doing? This isn't reinforcing. But for the kid, it was enough to just hear like that 1 or 2 seconds for every part of the song. And, you know, and it varied, and we only did that for a little while because I just needed him to get to the point where the pairing of my positive words paired with whatever the reinforcer was, that it was a good thing. So once he was happy to just interact with me or tickles or whatever it is that was like momentary, and I didn't have to rely on the tangible food or tangible toy or whatever it was, it was so much better. But at the beginning, I will make things last. And if you give all of something to somebody all at once, they do stop working for it because their motivation is done. That's all they wanted. It's the same reason that if you're giving your child video games or music or toys, I always recommend, all of us do, that during, you know, outside of therapy, they have no access to those things, because the value of that reinforcer then rises even more during therapy so that they're going to work longer. And reinforcement is it's a tricky thing, and you have to bring it in and out. And you have that strong reinforcers that you're going to give for new, really good behaviors, for effort. And then you have the reinforcers that they might like, but isn't like that cornbread, that you're giving for information that he's exchanging that is pretty easy for him, and he's learned it already. And so varying it and not letting them satiate on it really does help keep them working. But it sounds like the 6-year-old has figured out that once I get the cornbread, I'm done. So.
Well, and forgive my ignorance, because I don't know, but it sounds like, you know, there's always that thing about the preference assessment, about what does somebody really want? We just went through this on Mother's Day, where my husband was like planning this menu to make me this meal. And I had to stop him. And I was like, I got to be honest, if you really want to do something for me, cooking for me is not going to be the thing. Cleaning for me is going to be the thing, right? So I told him, right? I told him, this is the thing that's going to do it for me. Like, you know, clean the house. That's what will make me happy. So he could have cooked the whole meal and I would have sat and enjoyed it. Like, I enjoy when he cooks for me, but then I would have been like, but can you also clean the house, right? And so you're giving him the cornbread, and the cornbread might be great, but then he goes, can I have a break? Which sounds like to me what he really wanted was the break. Maybe you don't even need the cornbread. Am I ignorant?
It's, yeah,
is it a possibility?
If you have a BCBA, have them teach you how to do preference assessments outside of their therapy with him. Because if you can, preference assessments are pretty easy. My favorite is a paired choice one, where it's basically you introduce 2 of something, they choose one, and you continue to combine choices of 2 where they make it, and then you have a hierarchy of what they want. A lot of times though, like when I walked in a house as a therapist, whatever the kid was playing with when I walked in became the reinforcer for that.
Yeah.
I'd just pluck it out of their hands. I'd be like, okay, you get 2 more minutes. Okay, now it's mine. And for the next 2 hours, I'm there, like, because they loved it. They're already showing what they want to interact with. And that helped, because then it was just like, I didn't even have to think about, you know, what other things, what, you know, people used to say, like, you have your magic bag of reinforcers. It wasn't so much a magic bag as the kids just saw it as something that they hadn't seen or they hadn't had access to, and it only came with a therapist. Yeah. So yeah, that's the same idea of what I tell parents about, you know, with all the things around you in your house. I'm a big fan, especially for like the age of 6-year-olds, of doing the Once a month, you fill a laundry basket full of toys that they like, and you put it away for a month until 2 weeks or whatever. And then 2 weeks pass and you bring it out and it's like, wow, it's Christmas again. And then you take a different set of toys and you fill it up and you put it away. And that rotation of toys really keeps things very interesting, where they want to go, you know, have access to it, whatever it may be. But yeah, have your BCBA teach you how to do a preference assessment, do a reinforcement inventory to figure out what those things are. And then the combination and access level, you'll be able to get him to do a lot. It sounds like he's really smart.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we got a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to pedal through the metal on some of these. What do you think the ample amount of time of hours of ABA a 9-year-old high functioning needs to hopefully recover? He's been getting therapy since he was 3, started at 40 hours, now at 19 hours.
I can't tell you. I'm going to say honestly, I can't tell you right off. But if I had a 9-year-old come in and they were getting 19 hours, I would want to see what they're doing with those remaining 20 hours if it's in school. Because if it's in school, it's like that first question we had, you know, are they carrying the skills over to the school setting? Because if they're not carrying the skills over, I need those remaining 20 hours at school or 30 to be reinforcing everything that's being learned. Because if it's only something that's happening at home, 9-year-olds, there's a lot of peer involvement, and 9-10 is about when boys start not inviting everybody to you know, parties. It's only going to be a few friends that they have over, and that, you know, you start the number of friends limit access to starts to limit at that age. And you want to find that kid that is most like yours so that they can play, but like, does he know how to negotiate and compromise and play things and talk about things that isn't just interesting to him, but is interesting to the other child? You know, is he reading the cues so that he is responding even when the child isn't vocally telling him what to do, you know, or whether he likes it or not, so that he's your child's able to respond. But 20 hours, I think, is great for a full-time program at 9 years old. And if a lot of what you're working on is very high level, like perspective taking and executive functioning, 19 hours is actually a lot to do. It's very difficult because the sessions tend to be only about 2 hours that you can handle just to work through all the knowledge that's there. But a lot of the key is seeing, like, are they implementing what you're learning? Is he doing these things at school? Is it being like, is he generalizing on his own now to school? Or does it still require some kind of facilitation in the school environment or outside environment for him to show those skills? And so there's a lot of work back and forth. When I get 9-year-olds who come in and they're like, oh, we think he's done. And I'll say, okay, let's do a full neural assessment on him. Where is his language? Where is his social language? Where is his social problem solving? Where is his executive function skills? And then that tells you by what he's still not doing, the combination of deficits or skills that you still need to master will tell you how many hours you would have or that he still needs.
Okay. We've had this question before, but I don't think we've given them the answer that's worked yet. So they'd love to hear from you. How can I get my 22-year-old son to wear a mask? He flat out tantrums, so we are home for 45 days. He just can't accept the mask.
Yeah, he's 22 years old of not having to wear a mask. Not going to happen overnight. I have a 27-year-old right now. Mom asked me the same thing, and she was cute. She's like, can I send you my task analysis to see if it's right? I said, well, is he wearing it longer now? She's like, yeah, we're up to 20 minutes. I said, you're in a good, don't worry, you're in a good place, you know? But basically it's just breaking it down and, you know, finding something that matters. A lot of if you have a child who's sensory oriented, you might choose like what feels good against the skin, you know, like the tactile part of it, the sensory part of it, you want to be aware of. I've had different kids where we just like the kids, you know, what kind of Junkie or what kind of thing they like on their face. There's you can go about it that way. You're going to probe like what does he like on his face, and then if he likes, or if he's really into a certain character or anime or whatever it is, that can be a part of the mask too. And you're going to have him choose, like have him be a part of the process of like the preference assessment. Like, does he like the way it feels? Does he like the way it looks? Is he okay with it behind his ears, or is it going to be a systematic desensitization of getting it tied behind his head? You want to go through the whole process of each part of the mask to see what will work. And then whatever works, you start with 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and you slowly build, and you have a reinforcer that he gets for it. If there's some place that he really likes to go, like the other kid I have right now loves In-N-Out, which is, a hamburger chain here in California or on the West Coast. And it was like, well, if you want to go get it, you have to wear this mask all the way there. And he doesn't have to wear it back yet, but mom, they've gotten him to wear all the way there, and he gets it. And, we'll slowly get him to get it all the way back. And so you're going to provide reinforcers. You're going to look and do a preference assessment of all parts of the mask for him, how it feels, what it looks like. Is it ears? Is it behind the head? What, and some of the things you might just have to practice, not even associated with masks. I know a lot of our kids have sensory issues around their ears and can't even wear like headphones or anything. So we'll start with just like touching his ear, putting things against his ear, hanging things on his ear, slowly getting to that place where he's okay with something near his ears, and, just doing it one step at a time. Have your BCBA help you do a task analysis, and then you just slowly increase the time, give a reinforcer for every time he does it a little bit longer than he did the last time. And, eventually there are things out in the environment, hopefully, that he really wants to get to and go. And if you do that, he'll be able to do it. It just
slow and steady.
Yep, slow and steady. He's had 22 years of not wearing a mask. It's not going to happen overnight.
Absolutely. So we have somebody who's written in and said, need help with ABA so desperately. And they wrote in, we definitely have a difficult time motivating the 2.5-year-old. Now, I don't know whether you need help because you're doing ABA and you're having trouble motivating the 2.5-year-old, or whether you need help getting ABA. And so if you want to write in more, but if we could talk about the motivating the 2.5-year-old for a second, Evelyn, while we're waiting to hear back from her.
Well, I love the little 2-year-old. They're so fun because you can still pick them up. You can still hug and tickle them and do all those things that they like. And it's so funny because I've worked with all these different kids over the years, and a lot of them are actually like teenagers or in their 20s now. And the parents always say, like, I remember when you first came, you walked in the door, and I remember you got the first sound out of them, and she's just sitting on your lap, like it was just like the baby on my hip walking across the lawn. And if she wanted to go, I'd go, but I'd make her do something, whether it was clap or, just like say, make a face or whatever it was. And then if she wanted it, I'd put her on the swing. And before I'd let her go, I would have her do something and, let her go. And it just started with those really simple, small steps. But when they're little, the motivation, you can do therapy anywhere, because you can still move them. You can't move the 5-year-old. Sometimes you can move, but the 10-year-olds, there's no way you're moving, a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old. But with the 2-year-olds, you can just pick them up, and if they like tickles, you can give them tickles right away as a reinforcer in front of you. If you want them in front of your face, you can lift them in front of your face to do things. That said, once they get the idea that you're a lot of fun, then you can start working on the compliance things like sitting down and making sure that if you're going to have them sit down, their feet have to touch the ground. And so that means the chair has to be small enough, because then they full control of standing up and sitting down. Excuse me, I have allergies.
All good.
But there's a lot.
She did write in some more information. She said they need help with both, with the motivating the 2.5-year-old and with getting ABA. She says, most of my ABA is self-taught from video tutorial due to quarantine. But I want her to know that there are ABA providers that are starting clients right now. And if you're in the United States, chances are that your insurance covers it. And, if you're needing ABA, get started. At least check and see that you've got a way to have it, because it's easier when you've got a team that's working with you on this. That's what's been shown to be the most effective if you can. But I love that she's learning through video tutorials. And I do want to take just a second to say that The Institute for Behavioral Training still has free trainings available to you guys. If you go on their website, ibehavioraltraining.com, there are tabs up at the top, and there's the one it's like caregivers, community service. You click on that tab. Then it says a whole bunch of things. You pick the parent tab. Then it shows you all the things that are available for parents. They have 2 modules every week that are free. I do not know which ones are available this week, but if you put it into your cart and you put in the code word COVID, all capitals, COVID -19, if you've picked the right one, it'll say you owe 0. And there are 2 that are free. So I will try to find out what the 2 free ones are this week. And those are great, great videos. So, but Ev, anything else you want to say about that?
The 2-year-olds are the funnest. If you put them in the bucket swing, you can get them to do all sorts of things if they like swinging. If they don't like swinging, you can, if they liked being like rolled up in a blanket, you can roll them in a blanket and let go when, you can get them to clap and imitate. The focus of a 2-year-old is going to be compliance and imitation. If you just work on those nonverbal imitation, if you really just work on those 2 things, getting them to have some body awareness that they can get their hands to clap when you clap, touch their head when you touch their head. That's what other 2-year-olds are doing right now, is they're just imitating everything that's around them. So if you just focus right now on just the basic compliance of sitting, like sit down, come here, stand up, so that you have some basic compliance of them. And then you just focus a lot on imitation, they'll go really, really far, because that's how the basis of imitation is how we teach them how to play with toys, how to move their mouth and talk, how to eat. All their adaptive skills are all based on imitation. So if you just focus on those 2 things now, you're going to actually, the child won't be that far behind, because that's what 2-year-olds are doing right now.
And Evelyn, I've got to tell you that they've written in several things saying, thank you so much, great advice. And the mom who asked about the mask said this is the best advice that she's received since the quarantine, and thank you so much. Now, somebody wrote in and said, is an ISP a binding contract? And I don't know whether they meant to put IEP or ISP. Because somebody was asking about an ISP the other day. I can tell you that an IEP is a binding contract. But if you're asking about the ISP, please write back. Several people have written in and said the turtle wins the race when we're talking about the masks. We've got a person who wrote in and said, my son is a 14-year-old. He has been rejecting some caregivers he used to like. And that's, we've been hearing this from several different parents, things that the kiddo liked before, people that the kiddo liked before, now we're in quarantine, they don't like them anymore. Any advice for that?
Well, it's kind of like, sometimes typical kids will take their parents for granted because they're always around. But if mom or dad go away on a work trip or, just aren't around for a period of time, when they come back, it's like, oh, that's so nice to see you. It's like the value has increased, is it, distance makes the heart grow fonder or something like that. Yeah. It applies to our kids with autism too. So maybe mom and dad or other caregivers weren't home as much before, and the interaction was there and was special because it was only once in a while and they never knew when it was going to happen, or just, was once a week. And now the person's always there. So the novelty's gone away because it's not always fun or interesting anymore. It's like, this person is who they are and they have me do the same things that mom and dad asked me to do. And, they're not playing with me the whole time they're here like they did previously. So usually what I say in those situations is each one of them should create an activity or something that they do with a kid that kid does with nobody else. Whether it's watching movies or a certain movie, or, access to a certain, something just that they're doing together. That's special. So, excuse me.
You're fine. Take a second. I want to acknowledge somebody wrote in, and are you okay? They want to know, how can I help my 4-year-old stay focused to trace letters?
Well, I would say that unless they have the prerequisites for letters, letters have no meaning right now. So you would want to spend their time doing other things. Like finger skills are really important. I never knew until I started therapy, like, you know, all those cause and effect toys that you push buttons and turn, that they pop up. I never knew how important those were, but it builds all the finger strength in their fingers, so that if they are doing all those things and suddenly you put a marker in their hand, they actually know how to control their fingers to be able to write. And then there's a whole different skill about like visual motor in terms of writing. But initially I would say, just like practice all those hand skills, the coordination. One of the biggest problems so many kids have is putting the hand to hold. It's the bilateral coordination where you hold the paper down and you write. But so many of our kids are practicing in other places doing those things, like they'll hold their little Ziploc and get their crackers out, you know, just all of those things that just build up to that skill of writing. And if your child isn't interested in letters, maybe there's something else they're interested in. Maybe they like numbers better. Maybe they like shapes. Maybe they like, you know, Thomas the Train. There's just a lot of different other kind of like that hand-eye coordination that you can practice. It doesn't have to be a letters initially. What you need to get to the motor skill of being able to get to that point of being able to do it. So many of our kids never played with any of those toys and never did a lot of those motor skills previous to writing. And then suddenly we put them in school and we expect them to write. And they just don't even have the skill to do it. So I always tell families, you know, all those things like learn how to, you know, a clothespin, you know, even picking up Cheerios, you know, when they were 1. A lot of our kids never did those things with their grasp. And all of those things build up to as prerequisites to being able to write. So look and see at your child. Was he doing all those things? Was he able to twist something open with his hands? Is he able to open a doorknob, being able to twist his hand? Is he able to use a paper clip? You know, there's all these other things that your fingers have to do, and that builds the strength and the coordination before you get to writing. Or maybe your child likes words, so you're not going to start with A for ABC. You're going to start with the name of his favorite video, so that he has to trace the name of the video before he can watch the video. He'll be motivated to do that, you know? So there's a lot of different ways that you can work on the skill. You know, we don't know what your child's directly, so I can't give you specific recommendations, but evaluate all those skills. And, you know, does he have the prerequisites? And if he does, also look at it's easier to trace with a marker than it is to write with a pencil, because a pencil requires pressure. A lot of times we'll start with the marker and then I'll move to a pen and then I'll move to a pencil, because the pencil is the hardest one. And, you know, there's just a lot of things to evaluate. If you have an OT nearby, get an assessment. And a lot of OTs will give you the order of activities that your child needs to do to get to that point, to make sure they have all those fine motor skills to be able to do some writing.
And we have on our Pinterest page, the Autism Live Pinterest page, there is a whole thing that is just on fine motor skills. And it's all a bunch of games to play that work on the pincer grasp and the tri grasp. And none of them have anything to do, none of them are a handwriting skill. They're all other exercises that are fun games to play that build those skills. So absolutely love that. All right, we are almost out of time here. I'm going to try to squeeze one more question in, but for the parent who wrote in and said it is ISP that you're talking about, that's outside my knowledge. And so
I know what it is.
Okay, then do that one. Okay, talk about it.
I think it's an individualized service. Or is it ISP, or is that ISA, individualized service agreement? Is it that for this? Because that's basically the agreement between the school after the IEP. It's a contract for like one parent. It's not like a master contract for a lot of parents, you know, for a lot of kids, but it basically puts the services of what was agreed in the IEP into play. It is a contract. It's just for one person. If that is talking about, I think that might be it.
Now, there are a couple of people that we're not going to get to your questions, but I want to give you something before we go. We have a question about skills. So the person who wrote in about skills, who said, I'm there and I just don't know what to start with, write to me and I'll get that question to Evelyn. For the parent who wrote in and said that your child only wants to play video games and is 7, is getting 1 hour of telehealth per week, I want to tell you that reach out to me, but let's make sure that you're getting all the caregiver collaboration that you possibly can so that they can help you to get through this period of time, because our kiddos like what they like. If I could just sit right now, because with this COVID thing, if I could sit and just play a game and have everybody leave me alone, I would.
Yeah.
I just would. But your supervisor can help you with this. Write to me. I'll make sure that Ev is CC'd on it, but let's get you more. 1 hour of telehealth a week is just an annoyance because it's something taking him off of the video game. I see Ev shaking her head. I'm not completely in love.
And if he can do video games, he can do a lot of telehealth.
Yes, but 1 hour a week is not going to get it done.
Yeah.
And he's going to be like, that's just an annoyance, right? It's going to take more for him to be excited. Okay, I'm so sorry that we're not getting to more of your questions, you guys, but really excited. Tomorrow, you're going to want to make sure that you want to tune in the morning. We've got a wonderful young man who's a motivational speaker who's on the spectrum. And he's got some exciting news for you. And he's someone who was tested positive for COVID earlier last month and is doing great now. So great inspirational message that he's got for you guys. I know that you're going to want to tune in for that, but don't forget tomorrow night, we have that, it's a town hall, and it is, the title of it is The State of Special Education, and Bonnie Yates is going to give us up to the minute information. There's been some very important directives that have come out from Betsy DeVos. You need to know what they are and how they affect your child's special education. We have to stay informed because things are changing minute by minute. And most of your IEPs are out of compliance. The school is aware of that. They're going to have to make reparations. This is information that you need so that you get exactly what your child is entitled to. I want to take a second to thank Evelyn Kung for being with us today. What a joy and a treat it has been to be here with you. And I know that Dr. Grandpuchet was thrilled to hear that you would be filling in for her. But it is always a pleasure to be here with you, Evelyn.
Thank you so much. It's always fun to talk to you guys.
Thank you. And we will be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Shannon Penrod and you're watching Autism Live. We are coming to you live from my house and from our producer's house, which are not even close to each other. And later we're going to have a guest who's going to be coming from somewhere that it's not even close to either one of us. And that is the state of the state. Hey, which reminds me that hopefully you guys have received a notification that we are having a town hall tonight. This is very exciting for me. It's a town hall, so everyone is invited. I will tell you that there is a limit to the audience, but it's a large limit. But, you know, come early so that you don't get bumped out. But the topic is the state of special education. And our special guest is Bonnie Yates. She's going to be with us. She says she's got some cutting edge stuff, first of all, to notify you guys, because as you know, as things changed and directives were put out by different entities that asked us to please prioritize essential businesses, and there were school closures and all these other things, there was some little statement that was given to the Secretary of Education, who is Betsy DeVos, and it asked for directive for her about what to do about X, Y, and Z, right? And some of the directives have come through now, because she had, I don't know, like 30 days to respond. Some of that has come through. And if you, like me, don't know exactly what Betsy DeVos said and how it impacts your kid, then you're going to want to be there. And that's tonight. For those of you on the East Coast at 7 p.m., you know, the math is, so at 7 p.m. Eastern time, it will be at 6 p.m. Central time. No. Right? 7, 6, yes, 5 p.m. Mountain time, 4 p.m. Pacific time. And if you're in Hawaii, I count on you to do the math because it's past me. I'd have to take off my shoes. I want to say hi to Estella. Estella, hello. And Raquel, and to Christina, we're saying hello. Hey, that reminds me that there's lots of different ways to interact with us, especially today. Want to hear your interaction. If he has a second, Traven will post that for you. There are lots of ways to watch live. Let's talk about the live ways first. First of all, you can watch on our homepage, which is autism-live.com. Lots to do on that page, including check out our toy guide, chat with us anonymously. I'm able to access that here on my iPad. That when you see my arm go up, it's because I'm looking at the iPad over here. And that's the live feature. It's free, it's anonymous. But you can also be writing in on Facebook, on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitter. We are live in all of those places. And then the live show, you can replay it on any of those platforms, but we also podcast to the stuff that's on the other column: iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Deezer. So check us out. We're free in all of those places. And that's really important to me, that we remain free to you guys. I want you to be able to spend your shekels and your dollars and the pennies and your couch cushions on the things that you need to do to implement the things that we talk about here on the show, right? So I hope that you will check us out in all those places. Everybody has been asking lately about, well, what can I do for you? I had a bunch of friends who were like, you've been helpful to me. What can I do for you? Well, always with Autism Live, if you like us on Facebook, if you subscribe on our homepage, because that little box comes up and says, would you like to subscribe? You can subscribe on YouTube. And we love it when people give us a review on iTunes. That makes me extra super special happy, because it's totally on iTunes. I don't know if you know this, but you have your little icon and your thing is there, and people can search and find you, but there's a lot of things that have Autism and Live in them, so it's hard to find. But if people review you, your little icon gets bumped up. And if enough people review you, there have been several times that we have been in the top 10 for our category. And when that happens, then you get front page. So when people open up their podcasts, you're right there. And then a whole bunch more people find us. And that's very exciting when new audience members find us. And that's the only way to do that on iTunes. So review us on iTunes. We super duper love that. Hey, I like to remind you at the start of the show that we have a lot of experts that are here on the show, and you're going to love our guests today. But just please remember that I am not one of the experts. Let's be really, really clear about that. I am a mom of an individual who was diagnosed with autism, and I have an opinion. And yes, I've been hosting shows about autism, interviewing people for over 10 years. So I like to say that I have an informed opinion, but it's my opinion. It's not an expert opinion. And so you must take that into consideration. Yeah. But I care deeply about what you're trying to do. And I care deeply about the autism community. And I mean all aspects of the autism community. I always talk about how we have the core, which are individuals who are on the autism spectrum, and we are here to serve that community. Please don't be mistaken. No, I am not on the spectrum myself, although, you know, I don't have a diagnosis of anything, but I'm a very sensory person. I think we're all a little on the spectrum somewhere. Let me say that. But I don't have a diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder. I want to be very clear about that. Nor do I want to in any way act as though I do or might or have, right? I want to serve those individuals. But I also know that being a person who loves someone on the autism spectrum, that all the people who love people on the autism spectrum need some help and support in order to help and support those folks. So that's what we try to do here on the show, is help and support everyone so that we can get the resources and the respect and the jobs and all those things going for those individuals who are on the autism spectrum. Got it? That's where I'm coming from. And I don't expect everybody to agree with me. And in fact, I glory when people disagree with me. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I think that discourse is a great thing as long as it's civil. So that's where I am on that. But I do think we can all agree that the individuals on the autism spectrum deserve dignity, and they deserve their God-given rights, right? And their legal rights. If you don't agree with that, then please don't stay here. We have nothing for you if you don't agree with that. But I think if you're here, you agree with that. Okay, so let's take that common interest and let's be in that together. You know what I always say? We can do this together. Si se puede, right? We virtually hold hands. Okay, so on Thursdays, we like to start the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are the experts talking about? What does this have to do with this? I always say, you know, can this save me 5 minutes and $5? Because if it doesn't, do I really have time for it, right? So today's term is BIP, or I like to refer to it as the BIP, right? Some people refer to it as the BIP, some people don't. So what is the BIP? First, we give you the actual definition. Whenever possible, I make fun of it. Then we give you a working definition so that hopefully it can begin to start saving you that 5 minutes and $5. So the BIP is the Behavior Intervention Plan. That's what a BIP stands for. It's an action plan based on observations made in an FBA. Oh, goody, more jargon. That outlines how a team will improve difficult behavior that is inhibiting a child's success in school or other environments. And we're really talking about the behavior intervention plan in the school setting. Now, do we have the behavior intervention plans that happen at home? We absolutely do. I just think that we don't always refer to it as the BIP. You know, it's just, you know, what's our plan, whatever. But there is a very specific thing that the BIP does in the school setting. So that's the definition that I'm giving you here. And because this week is all about the education piece, right? We've had great guests talking with us about education, and tonight we're having that town hall. So let's move on to our working definition of the BIP to see what do we really need to know out of this. So the BIP is still a behavior intervention plan. It's a concise plan based on child-specific data for successfully managing challenging behavior. It protects the child from forms of discipline that are not effective, punitive, and random. So let's say that Johnny is in class and, you know, the school calls mom and says, hey, you know, Johnny's not paying attention. And, you know, mom's like, okay, what exactly would you like me to do about that? Because I'm a great mom, but I'm at work when Johnny's at school and I don't have control over what's happening when Johnny's at school, right? And it's very frustrating. And what if it's, you know, Johnny's hurting himself or Johnny's hurting somebody else, right? Whatever it is, school will notify the parents as if we're supposed to magically turn into the wife on The Incredibles and our arms can shoot out millions of feet and come to school and correct the child for what they're doing. It's crazy town, right? And yet, so schools send home a couple of notices and saying, he's hitting the student next to him. And then eventually an IEP meeting is called and they go, he's going to have to go to a different setting because he's being disruptive. And one of the things in the IEP is that if he is, preventing other learners from learning or harming other people, then he doesn't get to be in the least restrictive environment. And we want to protect their least restrictive environment. Whatever their setting is that we said cognitively that they could go into, we don't want to lose that because of behavior, one way or the other, right? So instead of sitting there and doing nothing about it, if somebody sends home a note and says the child is engaging in a behavior, we can start by asking questions, but fairly quickly, we want to ask for that FBA that was discussed on the last slide. An FBA is a functional behavior assessment. And what that does is an expert, hopefully a BCBA that's on staff at the school, that hopefully has a BCBA on staff at the school, that knows how to do a proper functional behavior assessment, tries to figure out what's actually happening. Why is the child engaging in this behavior? They're going to look at what happens before the behavior, what the behavior is like, and what happens as a consequence of the behavior. And then they're going to, once they've done the functional behavior assessment, they're going to convene a team, which will include the parents, if the parents choose to be there. And I'm going to cheat sheet, go right to the point here, be there for that, right? And we're going to come up with a plan that hopefully is based on the data of what the child was doing. It's not like a prefab, the child is hitting somebody, so let's spit out the BIP for when somebody's hitting somebody. It's an individualized education plan, IEP, and the behavior intervention plan has to be individualized as well. So we look at exactly why the child is engaged in this behavior, which is unlike what any other child is doing, right? So we find the function or functions of the behavior and we sit down and we want to make a plan for how are we going to intervene. Now, good BIP says, here's the behavior, here's why we're pretty sure that it's happening, but there's always a little asterisk that we might find out differently. And here's what we can do before the behavior happens. That's the antecedent modification. Here's what we can change before so that maybe we never get to this behavior. Here is the replacement behavior that we're going to give this individual because there's a reason why they're engaged in this behavior. And sometimes that's something you teach somebody, sometimes it's something else that you give them, but there's a replacement behavior so that we make sure that the need is being filled. That's key, right? And here is the consequence strategy that we have in place if this behavior happens so that we're not reinforcing the behavior. So I know I just spit a lot at you, but a good BIP has all of those things. And if it isn't in the replacement behavior to teach something, that we have something that we teach as well, right? It's an educational setting. Of course, we want to be teaching something, but we want to be successful. So if Johnny's not paying attention and we do the functional behavior assessment and we discover whole bunches of different things, right? We could discover that, Johnny is sitting behind a girl who has a big old yellow ponytail that likes to swish it. And that Johnny is so focused on that ponytail that everything else he can't focus, right? So in that case, the behavior intervention plan is not going to be hugely horrible, right? We're going to try a different placement setting for Johnny. But we're not just going to leave it at that. We're going to follow that process that I was just talking about. So the antecedent modification is that Johnny is put in a seat in the front of the classroom, right? But also that the teacher's going to check in on a regular basis. Maybe we discover that because he's very visually that, there's going to be a card that she holds up that gives him a thumbs up or a happy face or, some icon that he likes when he's paying attention, right? And we're going to make sure that because that's part of the replacement, he's going to get that visual stimulus from paying attention. And then we're going to put a consequence in place so that if we see that his attention has wandered, that maybe the consequence strategy is that the teacher goes over and just puts her hand on the desk and he knows that he's got to pay attention, right? It's not punitive, right? And the whole thing you see here is that we put a behavior intervention plan in place so that people don't just do something random. And I hate to tell the stories of the teachers and the substitute teachers who come in. There was the little boy, it just makes me so mad, a second grader who has a sensory thing that he likes to touch the tops of other people's ears. And they were working on that with him, and they had a behavior intervention plan for this little guy, but nobody shared it with the substitute teacher. And so what she did was she kept telling him, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. And then eventually she went over and pinched his little ears and said, how do you like that? Do you like it when people do it to you? Because that's how she was raised. And let's stop for a second and go, where's the basis for that working? That's humiliation and pain and punitiveness, right? But you know, that's how she chose to do it. Well, when you have a behavior intervention plan, and when there's a box on the first page of the IEP that says BIP plan attached, when that little box is checked, then the BIP becomes part of the IEP, which is a legal document. And if people don't follow everything in the legal document, that is legally actionable. So if the BIP, like, I don't want for anybody to be pinching ears to begin with. And I think the BIP is our best bet for like stupidity that happens to not happen. But in the case that it does happen, you know, the legal system has in place things that you can do for reparations for it. Now, I'm not about that. I don't want to get to the point where we have to get reparations for somebody being horrible and cruel to my child. So I'm one of those moms that I'm all about the BIP so that my child, you know, gets the proper intervention and doesn't get moved out of a placement that's good for him because somebody doesn't know what they're doing, right? I'm for education, and a BIP plan teaches people how to react to things that your child is doing. And I'm all for putting things in place that cradle our children and help them to be rockets and take off, right? So every year, what I would do is take the BIP plan, even more than the IEP, right? But it's good if you can do both, but take the BIP plan and I would stick it in one of those protective sheets. A mom told me to do this, and then put magnets on the back of it, and you give it to everybody who is on your team. And you say to the teacher, the classroom teacher, and if you have a substitute, can you please tell them where this is so that they can read through this before the day starts? Because I don't want to get to the point where we have to get lawyers. But I'll tell you what, it's important that you get the BIP and that you make sure that that little box is checked so that if something happens, you're able to point to it and go, excuse me, you knew better. I don't want to wait till that. But anyway, all right, BIP, a pretty incredible thing. By the way, we talk about skills all the time. Skills has an amazing BIP builder. It's better than anything else that I've seen. I like to use it both to build a BIP, but to check a BIP. Because sometimes the school will just give you a BIP and go, well, here's the plan that we're going to do for your child, right? And then you check it with the BIP builder and it will tell you if it's a solid BIP, if it's scientifically based. And you can follow right along and look at it. I've shown the BIP builder to teachers and teachers go, this is amazing. It's a really cool thing. So that's Skills for Autism. You can check that out. Okay, we're running late here because we've got a great guest. So let's move on to our question of the day. Our question today is, what do you do when you feel yourself starting to melt down? Look, we all have moments when we feel like the wheels are coming off. If you didn't feel that ever before, you're feeling it at some point in this great isolation, right, that we're all in. So what do you do for yourself when you feel a meltdown coming down? Now, I always say that for me, there's a difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. And a tantrum is when you're not getting your way and you want to get your way, right? And the defining thing for me is if someone's having a tantrum and you give them what they want, then the tantrum stops, right? If I'm standing in line at the DMV and they've letting other people go ahead of me and I start yelling and going, hey, you know, this is crap and I'm going to call and complain and you're taking people in front of me and and I start to yell, right? I'm having a tantrum. But if the person says, I'm so sorry, you're next, come on right now, I'm taking you right now, then I stop yelling. That's a tantrum. A meltdown is when a tantrum happens, and even if you give me the thing I want, I'm still upset. And I'm still like the wheels are coming off. And I don't know if you've ever had that happen. I certainly have had meltdowns because I have allergies and I have sensory issues. And part of what I want to say to you is meltdowns happen because there's other stuff on board. And right now we all have other stuff on board because we don't have control over our entire lives right now. We can't just do what we want to do. You can't just walk out your door and go to the mall right now. Maybe in some places you can right now. I can't. But so what do you do when you feel the meltdown starting? When you feel like, oh, the wheels are all coming off? Because I really want us to talk about this today because there are lots of things that we can do. And sometimes you might have a way that's really effective for you that I may never have thought about that ends up being my way. And I think it's good to talk about these things, to have a plan for what to do. And I think that when we know this for ourselves, then we are kinder and gentler for other people when we're watching them struggle with or achieve the process. And that's where we all need to get, right? Is having an awareness that just because what I have going on is not what you have going on. And that I know when I have something going on, what I would like is some understanding and maybe some room, but some kindness, right? But so let's chat about, what are the things that we do to help ourselves with meltdowns, but let's also get a little bit more in tune with the fact that everybody's got something going on, whether it's this period of time when we're dealing with COVID or any period of time, everybody has something going on. I have a friend who was battling cancer and she had to pull up and get her mail, and it was a chemo day and she needed the mail and she couldn't, there were no parking spots. And so she parked in a place she should not have parked. And she went into the mail place to get it. And here came the mailman who was just screaming at her and saying, lady, what is wrong with you? You are the most inconsiderate. You just are like this privileged, this horrible. And my friend looked at this mailman and said, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to focus on being able to breathe today. It's a chemo day. And the mailman immediately changed and was like, I'm so sorry. I battled cancer 2 years ago. Bless your heart. What can I do? Can I help you? And the whole equation changed, right? And sometimes we're looking at other people and going, what are you doing, right? But it's because they have things going on. So we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But our topic of the week this week, we've already sort of touched on it because we're talking about education, is learning to learn. How can we all help ourselves and help our loved ones to be efficient learners? And it is not a one size fits all. It just isn't. And as a former teacher, this is one of the things that jazzes me, is finding out, oh, I learn this way, you learn that way. How can I teach you? And when we connect, when I can teach you this in a way that is different than I learn, ooh, that's some exciting stuff. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But we've got this great guest that's here with us today. I've been friends on Facebook, but I've not had the pleasure of talking with him directly before today. Brenton Tyler Hoffmann is joining us right now. He's an actor, a model, a dancer, a guitarist, a rapper, a motivational speaker, and an amazing young man. And so I believe that he is here with us. Can we activate his camera, Traven? And we'll talk to Brenton about all the things that we want to talk with him about. So, Brenton, are you there? I thought I saw him come in the room, but perhaps I am mistaken. No? Is he with us, Traven? All right, I'm going to keep talking until we get that all up and running. There. Okay, I knew if I took him. There's Brenton. Brenton, can you hear us? Do you see your sound button on your, and maybe Traven, you can be messaging him to let him know what he has to do. But I'm really excited. You know, more and more people have been writing to us and saying, hey, have you got time for me to be on your show? We do have a process for people if you want to be on the show while Brenton is getting his stuff hooked up. But we love to hear from you guys. And if you have something in particular that you want to talk about here on the show, you can reach out directly to me. But it is important that you tell me what you want to come on and talk about. But we're going to be talking with Brenton today about a lot of different things in his life, and how autism is a part of his life and things that he does to motivate other people. Can you hear us now, Brenton?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, and we can hear you. Fabulous. And so excited to have you here with us this morning. So Brenton, tell our audience members a little bit about you and how autism plays a role in your life.
Well, it's a great question. You know, it fluctuates. It goes in cycles a lot. It's a very, very misunderstood condition, probably one of the most misunderstood conditions on planet Earth, I'd say, because people like to pigeonhole it and say that it's, you know, high functioning, low functioning. And what people don't understand is that it fluctuates in cycles. So one day you could be not functioning at all. You could be completely brain dead from the brain fog. From the overstimulation, from the sensory overload challenges to everything in between. And then other days you're perfectly functioning and you feel fine. But I would say that there's more off days than on.
And so to be clear, because I never like to define for someone else, but how do you identify yourself? Do you identify as, what words do you use to identify yourself? Let's put it that way.
You know, I'm actually, I'm actually above and beyond identifications. I don't even really identify with much of anything anymore.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So tell us about you, because you're very multi-talented and you have a lot of things going on. Tell us a little bit about your life.
Sure, you gotta bear with me as I'm trying to multitask, because I'm actually, I'm on the phone right now.
Oh.
On Zoom, and I wanted to bring it over to my laptop, but there's like all these interferences, so I'm just saying forget the laptop. I'm just gonna go straight from my phone. But,
okay.
But that's what was happening, and then there was some sound problems, but I can hear you fine, you can hear me, so we're good. So your question was a little bit about more of my life and what I...
Yeah, well, one of the things that you had said to me that you wanted to talk about, I'm looking back at my notes because I'm like, do I have this wrong? One of the things that you had said was that you wanted to talk about my life living on the autism spectrum, but I don't want to put labels. So tell me what you want to talk about with that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it's because you asked me, like, you know, a couple things to talk about, and I like to keep things relevant. And so it's interesting because I tuned into your show a little bit while I was multitasking and trying to, you know, get things set up, and you were, you know, basically, it sounded to me you guys were talking about sensory challenges and stuff. I heard you talk about going to the DMV and meltdowns and things like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm a very sensory person. I was saying at the start of the show that I don't have a diagnosis, but I'm a very sensory person, and I struggle with sensory things, and I have to take deep breaths, and I have to have strategies to help myself with that. But that's not the same as someone that has a diagnosis, and I'm well aware of that. But I always like to try to relate it to other people so that they can see, this isn't something that's foreign and removed. We can all understand these things. We just have them to different degrees. But is that how you feel about it?
Absolutely. It's a spectrum for a reason. And it took the DSM, a really long time to figure that out. I was actually denied multiple times because supposedly I appear so high functioning according to their criteria, as they put it, that but the testing was always really close. They said, oh, mild. If anything, you have like very form of mild autism. And I'm like, look, I would tell them, I'd say, listen, mild, not mild, like, people, autism is like a conundrum. It's so complex, and I think that when you try to figure it out, you dig yourself deeper in a hole of confusion. And then there's a lot of misinformation out there, and just like this whole COVID-19 thing, I think everybody's just trying to be a know-it-all, and everybody's just trying to think they have all the answers. And I think that they would rather act smart and play off being stupid, if that makes any sense to you, like
Yeah.
without judgments. Like they would, rather than go ask for an answer or figure out what the real answer is and get real evidence, they would rather act intelligent or think that they have the answer and make themselves look foolish for their own ego purposes. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think
you know, what I'm interested in is that you have a very unique vantage point, because you are someone who, I imagine you've dealt with some challenges in your life, and you tend to be somebody who comes through them, and have recently had challenges that you've come through.
That's my specialty.
We'll talk about that.
Sure.
There's even a name that they have for you. What is your nickname?
The Walking Miracle Warrior.
And why? Why do you have that? And how has that been reaffirmed recently?
Great question. So the reason why I go by the Walking Miracle Warrior is because I've overcome things that most people, or, you know, when I say most, I don't really refer that or put it in the category of all. But statistically, out of a lot of people, I've overcome a lot of things that you usually don't walk away from. And there's a lot of people out there, you know, that also have gone through similar situations, but we're talking like, you know, medically, they said it was impossible, you know, like the percentages were like 0.00001, like just impossible odds, you know. So I've been deemed a medical anomaly. Not just once, but multiple times.
And I don't want to pry, but like, what are you willing to tell us? Like, what are some of the things that you've come through?
Sure. You know, I don't know how much you investigated me or researched me or learned about me or whatever. I'm famous amongst certain circles. You know, there's different levels of fame. You got like worldwide, global fame. You know, they call that the Tom Cruise fame, you know, or whatever. And then you got, you know, fame where people know you amongst certain circles or certain individuals. And I'm kind of that name. My name's Brenton Tyler Hoffmann. People, when I meet people, they'll go, "Oh, that name sounds familiar. I've heard that before," or "You look familiar." You know, so it's kind of like that, where certain individuals recognize you and other people have no idea who you are. But to answer your question, in terms of like what I've been through, you know, like I said, my life is an open book. You can research me. My information's out there. It's on Facebook. It's on Google. But for a few things, for those that don't know me, you know, going back in the history a little bit, I overcame a rare blood infection bacterium at 6 months of age. I had a hernia at age 5. I mean, what child, you know, 5 years old has a hernia? You know what I mean? Like, that's serious stuff. So we're talking the rare blood infection, survived that. The hernia, survived that. And then, you know, just overcame serious stuff, you know, years of child abuse and neglect and just so many different complicated things, on top of sensory challenges and you know, things like that, as if that wasn't enough to deal with. But the serious stuff was like, at 18 years old, I was in a major car accident and shattered my C6 vertebrae. If anybody knows anything about vertebrae and stuff like that, your C6 is probably one of the most sensitive vertebrae on your spine. Very similar injury. The same thing that happened to Christopher Reeve happened to me, and I actually survived it. I actually miraculously walked away 12 hours later when the doctors told me I would never walk again, and they were just scratching their head like, how's this even possible?
You're a miracle. You're a survivor.
Yeah. Yes. Resilient, as resilient as they come, I would say. Yeah.
And you know, you've taken that, and you don't take it lightly from what I've seen of you, and are trying to utilize that for good. You are a very handsome young man, and so you are a model, and you are an actor.
A lot of different things. Yeah. Not professionally. A lot of different things. Yeah, you know, on my journey, you know, I've done a lot of things. I've modeled and I've, you know, done music. I'm a hip hop recording artist and a music producer, and I've done a lot of different things. But my main focus, you know, is coaching and consulting, harmonic consulting, is my company. And, you know, I do a lot of charitable work, and, you know, I give away my time, and I do things more from a philanthropic, a humanitarian perspective. And I've helped a lot of people with disabilities, including autism. And I've actually had, you know, one of my students actually is a pretty successful person on the autism circuit that speaks all over the country with his mother. He's a former student of mine, and I helped him and inspired him to get to the next level of greatness and, you know, really step into that resilience. So
Is this somebody we've had on the show?
possibly, yeah. Yeah, I believe so.
You're not allowed to say their name?
He might have been on the show. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name. I mean, he's given me a testimonial before, but we're no longer in contact. We don't, I don't help him anymore. He's done his own thing. I think that there was a perceive, and I say it very, when I really pay attention to the words I say, but I would say from his perspective, it was a perceived, he misunderstood me because he's on the autism spectrum. He might have somehow in some way misinterpreted my intentions of me helping him. You know, everyone has their fears and their challenges and their struggles, you know, and the stories they make up in their head, regardless if they're true or not. And I think it was one of those situations, but I helped him tremendously in his life and his path, and, you know, the success that he's had today.
Now, one of the things that you also said that you wanted to talk about is the phrase, the spectrum in everything. Tell me what you want to talk about with that.
Sure. So I think that people will start to understand autism, and not just autism, but, you know, other disabilities, disorders, diseases, all kinds of things, even this whole COVID-19 thing going on right now. If they stop identifying, again, right, when you ask me, how do I identify with stuff? I don't identify with things anymore, because I think once you start to identify, you pigeonhole yourself into one particular thing, and then it's no longer a spectrum. So I think that everything truly is a spectrum, all the way down from, you know, a snowflake with its most unique original designs. There's no two alike, all the way down, you know what I mean? Like everything truly is a spectrum. There is no one size fits all. I don't know if you got that part in my message where I said that autism isn't a cookie, people. You know, there's no cookie cutter approach to this. You know, stop identifying with what you think it is, and just realize that it's like a fingerprint. There's no one two alike. It's just, that's the way it is.
And I so appreciate that. I don't know that I know how to overcome, because as I always talk about, you know, that here on the show, we're talking about the larger autism community. So that starts with individuals who have a diagnosis, but then we extend that to everybody who loves them, right? And for the people who, I'm one of the people, I have a son who was diagnosed at 2.5. And so I care and I want to be helpful. And the last thing I want to do is use language that sets anybody back, right? But sometimes we don't know. So I want to ask you, like, what, for those of us who love someone on the spectrum, what are the things that we can be doing to help and not hinder? Because we don't always know.
Sure, great question. So I think that's when you treat them as the individual that they are through that perspective or that experience, and stop treating them like they're 5, or stop treating them like they have autism, and you just treat them as so in that experience, if that makes any sense, then you'll have better and greater results. I think that if you treat, okay, there's this thing in sales, a lot of us learn this just in general in business and just life, and I've especially learned it. It's called mirroring and matching. And unfortunately, that doesn't work with somebody with autism. If you mirror and match them, they actually will think that you're giving them a hard time, what I've noticed. And again, everyone's different, but I'm saying there's these universal similarities in a lot of people with autism. And I think that when you have autism, I've noticed this on my journey, that when you have autism, you have really greater intuition levels, and you know who has autism and who doesn't. Like I can literally look at somebody, I kid you not, and I can know right away if they have autism or not. It's just one of my gifts. Yeah, I just know who's on the spectrum, who isn't. And people say, well, that's extremely controversial. Like, you're not a doctor. You don't need to be a doctor to have this level of intuition. It's God-given. You're born with it.
Interesting. Somebody's written in, because we, one of the things, we have a question of the day and we ask people, what do you do to help yourself when you're having a meltdown? And somebody wrote in and said, I rarely have meltdowns, but they are vicious when they happen. And they went on to say that having a learning disability made me feel stupid. And as a former teacher, boy, that just rips my heart apart. Because one of the things that we've been talking about all week is that people learn in lots of different ways. That doesn't make anybody wrong.
People love in different ways. People express in different ways. People, and it really comes down to cognitive dissonance. Look that up. Cognitive dissonance, and it really comes down to our belief systems and what shapes and makes our world.
Yeah, absolutely. Has anybody ever made you feel like you were less than because of who you are?
Well, great question. Back then, yes, I used to believe that people made me feel certain ways, but over all the work that I've done on myself and my level of awareness and perception, I realized that it was never anybody who made me feel anything, but it was more myself based on my own perceptual experience.
Interesting. And so when you're coaching people, who's like your ideal client? Like what kind of person do you really love to coach?
Well, for one, great question. I love to coach people who are coachable, who are willing to want to change and believe that they not so much have a problem, but look at it from the perspective of they want to grow and they want to expand their level of consciousness and awareness, and they want to know how to basically stop constantly always trying to identify with things that's what they are. Those are my best clients, because they're more likely to have the most success in their life.
And is it pretty open-ended for your clients, Brenton? If they do you only take people who want to be in the public eye and want to be speakers or writers? Or if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I just really, for instance, I want to be better in my social circle. I feel like I don't understand when I'm around, people of the opposite sex. I don't understand all the unspoken stuff. Do you take those kinds of clients? What's your area of expertise, or is it broad?
I'm really doing my best these days to narrow it down to one specific category of individuals. But for the longest time, it's been broad. And I think that's actually, I think that's hurt me more than helped me, because it's like, I have that mentality and that heart center where I just want to help as many people as I can. And I think that, it's a great quality, but what happens is it limits me, because there's only so much time. There's only so much, there's so many hours in a day, or, there's only so much you can do for somebody. I think it really comes down to work with the willing, who's willing to change their life for the better, and who's willing to invest. Life is, yes, I've given my services complimentary and have helped people tremendously for a long time. Most of my work has been very, philanthropic, and, and I help all different types of people, and people who genuinely could not afford me, and all these things. And I think it comes to a time in your life where life is really a value system. And I think that people are willing to truly invest in themselves if they can really see an outcome in a situation. And I have to help them see that outcome, but it's never up to me. I don't ever guarantee anything, because it's humanly impossible to guarantee something.
Sure. And one of the other things that you said that you wanted to talk about is sensory overload to the max. And I've already identified that I'm somebody who has sensory issues, so I'm very interested.
Yes. So for one, I'd like to ask you a question and return to that. How long have you had sensory issues? Have you had them your whole life?
Yes. From being a very young child. Yes.
Right. So like when your mom was vacuuming the house, like what did you do?
I would sit and do this so that it would make a noise. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd pat your ears, or you'd hold them?
I would pat them so that it would make the noise. It would make a funny noise, and I liked the noise that it made. Right.
So here's
I haven't thought of that in years.
Great. I used to do the same thing, and I never knew why, but it all started to make sense after I got my diagnosis. And you know, the thing is it's never too late to get a diagnosis, and the diagnosis is not just to have a label and say, okay, look at me, I got autism now. It's to give you a level of understanding, like, okay, cool, I'm not crazy, this is real, I've had this my whole life, it all makes sense now. And that's how it was with me. Now, to answer your question, because I was curious, I wanted to ask you a question after you asked me a question, because I want to see how it was relevant. Yeah, the sensory challenges have been unexplainably, incomprehensibly complex, to say the least. Like, yeah. They are very, very overwhelming, and they never, no matter how much meditation I've done, all the thousands upon thousands of hours, I haven't, you know, I can't even keep track of how much meditation and going within, and all the work, you know, spiritual work I've done on myself, as well as personally developing myself for 20 years. I mean, I've been on this journey. I still struggle with these sensory challenges. And again, some days are worse than others. People need to understand that there's going to be days where it's going to be so overwhelming, you're just going to feel like you're going to, you know, crawling in your skin kind of thing. But the thing is, again, it's a spectrum. Goes back to those other questions, right? Like in the sensory, it's like you never know, and you can never pinpoint when it's going to be worse or when it's not. Sometimes it's like anxiety or like panic attack. It could just hit you out of nowhere. But there's subtleties. And if you're aware and you've had it enough times, you could actually catch yourself from having that anxiety attack or that meltdown, going into that question from before. And you could actually lessen the impact of that experience, that sensory experience, or that reaction you're going to have, because you are keen awareness of seeing it or feeling it before it happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah, so you can calm yourself down in situations because you're aware of what you went through before. That's what I could describe it.
Yeah, no, I love, so, okay, now I have another question for you. Do you find, I know for me, one of the things that I discovered is that I have allergies. I have both food allergies and allergies to things in the environment. And so certain times of the year, I have to be extra careful with my diet, because if it's like, it's almost like my body can handle this much, and if you put this much more on, then everything cascades down. So for my sensory issues, if it's allergy season and I've eaten something that I have a mild allergy to and something sensory happens, it's over. It's over. Yeah. Game over. Do you find that too, or is that just me?
Absolutely. That's why I'm nodding my head. Yeah, in agreement. Yeah, and I think it's very common for a lot of people on the spectrum. Again, I think there's, okay, here's the thing. When you become really, really aware of this, and the more, I'd say the more in tune you are, or the more consciously aware of something you are, and the more in the heart, the less you're in the ego. Does that make sense? So if you're trying to figure everything out, right, you think you have all the answers and you think you know everything, then, you know, it usually is a backlash. But I have become very, very aware of my sensory acuity, and not just within myself, but I can literally, I know, I'm like kind of like the good doctor in a way. I know when somebody's hurting. I know when somebody's in pain. I know, even if they're showing me that they're not. Even if you're smiling right at me, looking at me, look like everything's fine, like, look at me, hey, how's it going? We're all just having a good time here. I know, I could see through the veil of people's pain, people's confusion, people's anxiety, people's worries. And it's kind of shocking. You know, there's times when I could, you know, I don't even need to make direct contact to get information. That's where my intuition comes from, you know.
So I know you don't like labels, but if people talk to you about whether you are, because there are people who identify themselves as intuits, that they can intuitively. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I try not to get caught up in the labels, but unfortunately we live in a world, us human beings, we like to identify with certain things. I mean, I can identify with certain things. I just don't like to pigeonhole me, because then people say, oh, that guy was pretty interesting. That actor that was on Autism Live. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. He's an actor. What movie is he in? I haven't seen him in a movie. You see, you get pigeonholed into this certain category, and then people think that's what you are. So it's like, if I was to, if somebody was to say, what do I identify with, or what are you, or, you know, how, I would just say, you know, it's hard to say that. I would just say, because people have called me, you know, a modern day Renaissance man, because I do so many different things, you know, and again, that can hurt you as more than help you, because
Yes.
if you have autism and ADHD, you don't go you're all over the place. You got your hands in too many cookie jars.
Yes, I understand completely what you're singing my language here. So let's stop for just a second because we're running out of time here. And I want to make sure that people know if they're interested in being coached by you, or they know somebody, or they want more information about you, where would we send them?
Sure. So got a website, BrentonTylerHoffmann.com. Just how's it sound? I don't know if you put it up, but it's BRENTON and then TYLER, middle name Hoffmann, HOFFMANN. Kind of a long name, BrentonTylerHoffmann.com. You can go there. All the information's there. You can, it explains everything, but also, it's connected to my other site, Harmonic Consulting, and I have Facebook, Harmonic Consulting. You can go there. You could check out the testimonials and the people that I've helped, video as well as written testimonials, to make a sound decision for yourself if we'd be a good fit or not. I'm not a fit for everybody.
Wonderful.
I'm again, people try to identify me. They'll say, "Are you a nice person? Are you a mean person?" I am what you want me to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it really comes down to how bad do you want change. I think if people want change as bad as they want to breathe, they'll make change and they'll invest in their future and their life.
And I'm gonna readdress this, but if you don't want to talk about this, then we won't answer it. But there was something that I believe from being friends with you on Facebook that recently that you went through that sort of reaffirmed that warrior survivor thing. Do you want to talk about that or not?
Sure, yeah. What would you like to ask me? For one, I was in a magazine just recently on the cover of Influential People magazine, rated as one of the top influential, resilient experts in the world. So I'm pretty proud of that.
That's amazing. But I was talking specifically about the fact that you had a little bit of a COVID experience, I believe.
Yeah. So it's complex, right? Because I got sick in February. Oh, was it February? I'm trying to remember.
I feel like it was March.
Yeah. Well, March 20th, I ended up in the hospital. I actually, I really wrote it out, me being resilient, and I just thought it was a respiratory infection that went into my lungs. And I thought, whatever, I'll just ride this off. No big deal. I've always had that mentality, ride it out till the wheels fall off kind of thing. And it was just too much to bear. I couldn't take it. Drove myself to the hospital when I was really sick. I didn't even know how sick I was, but I drove myself to the hospital, and got there, and very, very stressful situation. I had to call in advance, let them know that I was coming. A lot of runaround, very stressed. I mean, you're already sick and stressed out in general. You have to go through more stress. But anyways, get there. They run tests. They finally tell me that they had a concern. Saw that I had what is called bilateral pneumonia in both of my lungs. I'm thinking, oh, great, that does not sound good. What's the next step? Blah, blah, blah. They said, well, your insurance doesn't cover this particular hospital that you're at. So, we're going to have to send you home. I'm thinking, you're sending me home with bilateral pneumonia? Like, so you're sending me to my bed to die? Is that what you're saying to me? I'm like, you got to find another solution. So they got me to another hospital that accepted my insurance. Go figure, right? It's always an insurance thing, right, that gets in the way. And they ran some other tests again, confirmed that I did have double bilateral pneumonia, and put me in a special room. And I felt like I was in the movie E.T. meets The Boy That Could Fly from the 80s. It was ridiculous.
Were they all in hazmat suits and things around you? That's got to be weird.
Yeah, all the above. Yeah. And then finally got my test results. Took a really long time because, that was a couple months ago. So, I guess things have sped up now, but they said that they confirmed that I actually had the COVID-19, and I was just like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Like with bilateral pneumonia, which like most people are like on respirators and like, or die from that, So again, right, a true walking miracle. I mean, the fact that they told me I had it, but then on top of that, the fact that I was able to, I didn't even, my CO2 levels were normal. They were looking at me like, how's this even possible? Like, your CO2 levels are normal. You have bilateral pneumonia, like, all this stuff. So anyways, So yeah, it's a mystery to me because, you know, my whole life I've been sick. You know, I've had challenges, you know, sensory challenges with the autism, all that stuff. But I was also diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease as well. I mean, you can look at my story; it's pretty amazing. It's enough to make your head spin, you know. And all
But
the
here you are, you overcame all of that. Here you are, and you seem pretty healthy now. Do you feel well now?
yeah, I mean, I mean, yes, and I mean, compared to that, yes, I do. But I mean, I have been, you know, in the house a lot and cabin fever and haven't spent time with anybody and this whole COVID-19 and social distancing and all this stuff. And we're talking, you know, I've been in the house for 60 days or probably no longer, you know. So it's I feel like I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like I feel kind of under the weather, you know, because I don't go out much. And so I
But
feel
how are your lungs though? Or is the bilateral pneumonia gone?
oh yeah. I mean, it left an after effect for whatever reason, you know, like I feel like I'm still regenerating and recovering from the hit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes a while. I mean, I've had pneumonia before, and it takes a while to get over it fully. But
I'm doing
I'm
better.
glad I'm glad that you're on the mend at least,
Yeah.
and what a great testimony for people, you know, to hear that you did get over it and that you are an amazing survivor and a warrior. And so
Thank you.
give the websites again because we're out of time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It doesn't even seem like it was like, how much time was that? It's like time goes by so fast. I'm like,
I know. And we actually kept you much longer than we had said we were going to. So thanks for being willing. So what's your website?
Yeah, the website is Brenton, my name, BrentonTylerHoffmann.com. Also, if you guys are curious about me, you know, I'm a public figure. You can Google me, Brenton Tyler Hoffmann. Just on Google, you can find stuff on me there. But if you go to my website, all the information's there. Check it out. Reach out to me, and yeah, I'd love to talk to you more.
Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure. Thanks so much.
You stay healthy. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. I just thank you. We want to take just a second here at the end to tell you a couple of things. First of all, there's that town hall meeting tonight, the state of special education with Bonnie Yates. And it's on our Facebook. Go on our Facebook and you'll find the link of how you join. It's a Zoom webinar. So you will need the code to get in. And when you go to Zoom, you go to Zoom and you you know, first, if you haven't done Zoom before, you'll have to download some stuff. So do that before the meeting, but it's free. And then it'll say join. You have choices: start a meeting, you know, join a meeting. If you click join a meeting and you put in the ID number, it'll take you right to it. Now that's happening at 4 p.m. Pacific time. That means it's 7 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Central time, 5 p.m. Mountain time, and 4 p.m. On the Pacific coast. And Bonnie's going to, I believe, start off with giving us an update, but there will be an opportunity for question and answer. And I just, you know, share the information with people. We can only let a certain number of people in. It's a large number. I'm not worried about it, but I do want to put that out to you so that if you want to come, make sure you get there a little bit early, so that you make sure that you have a seat at the table, as it were. I also want to tell you that tomorrow for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we're going to cover a bunch of news stories that are kind of exciting and one horrible, but the rest are good. And George Steeves is going to be with us. He is another actor on the autism spectrum that we've had on the show before. He did that wonderful one-man show, The Magic 8 Ball, and he's going to be joining us. Boy, he's been working, and so we're looking forward to having George back with us. And it was Nancy's birthday the other day, so we're going to celebrate Nancy's birthday tomorrow too. All of that's happening tonight and tomorrow. Until then, oh, I was going to tell you too that skillsforautism.com, if you guys go there, that was the thing for the one I really want. That's if you want the BIP builder. For if you want, there's free training from Institute for Behavioral Training right now. So you go to ibehavioraltraining.com, and when you get there, there are things across the top. You want to take the one that's health and community. There's the little tabs at the top. It says something health, community, whatever. Then you go to caregiver, and then you go to parent, and you'll see that they have different modules. And I'm going to give you the rest of the information because we're out of time and I'm late for a meeting. But there are some of the modules are free. You have to use the code COVID-19. It has to all be in caps with a -19. But I'll give you more of the information about that tomorrow. Until then, I hope I see you tonight. But until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
Welcome to the show, everybody.
So I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Allspot Jackson.
And we're thrilled to be here with you guys this morning in this interesting world that we live in. We're going to be with you live for the next hour. At least we're going to try. I don't know about you, Nancy, but the internet in my house has gotten more and more interesting. Do you find that?
Yes, definitely.
I just as we were starting, my internet slowed up just a little bit and I realized, oh, my son is getting on right now for his class as well. So there we go. We're stretching it as far as
Wyatt is in the process of a class right now.
There we go. So Nancy, you guys doing okay?
Yeah, we're hanging in. You know, I can't believe that this is continuing to go on for so long.
Yeah. And especially here in LA, where we've got the devastating news this week that we're being asked to stay at home through, is it July or August? I can't even get my head wrapped around it.
I think it's August.
I think it is too. I'm in a little bit of denial about it. But you are such a trooper. You celebrated a birthday this week. Happy birthday.
Thank you, my dear. Yeah, my birthday was on Tuesday and I had a really nice birthday. Wyatt made me breakfast in bed and I got all kinds of gifts and there are balloons all over the house and I had a homemade birthday cake and a small social distance gathering with a few friends. So it was really a nice time despite everything that's going on.
The New York Times said this week that there's a lot of experts that are encouraging you to continue the social distancing, but to get outside, and that if you want to get together outside and keep social distance with people, that they're encouraging churches to do that and they're encouraging classes to be held outside. I thought that was interesting new news, that they're seeing very little spread from being outdoors if you're masked and social distancing. I thought that was at least a little bit of good news.
Yeah, that's encouraging. I'm just noticing I got an email from the superintendent with a survey wanting to know what if parents are interested in doing small portions of students to attend school on a given date or time to minimize contact. So,
is that for the fall or for the summer?
For the fall.
God, oh man, okay. Well, there we go. And, Wyatt is finishing his senior year. Have they said, are they going to do anything for graduation, Nancy?
Yeah, they're filming. He's going to pick up his cap and gown today, and they're filming them next week walking across the stage to get their diplomas. So that'll be in a video.
Wonderful.
So they are doing that. And then
Wonderful.
They're handing out, I don't know, they're doing something via the cars where I think they're handing out yearbooks and doing a big celebration for that.
Oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about the yearbook thing. It's crazy. Here we are at the end of the school year, and there's normally it's crazy, but it's a different kind of crazy this year. Well, we're so proud of Wyatt. Please give him our love, and tell him how proud we are of him. We've got a big show for everybody today. We've got, we're going to cover some news first, and then we've got a wonderful guest. George Steeves is going to be joining us. He is a really lovely young man who is an actor, identifies himself as being on the spectrum. He has that wonderful one-man show that we've had him on to talk about before, called The Magic 8 Ball. But he's been doing a lot of mainstream work that you guys might recognize him from. So we're thrilled to have him on the show today to talk with us. But first, Nancy, we've got quite a few news stories. Some of them lovely, and some of them not so lovely. So if it's okay with you, I want to start with a story that was in CNN this week that said that the first study of autism in adults, isn't that crazy to think that for the first time, they're actually trying to do a study to see what percentage of adults are on the autism spectrum in the United States. And here it is, 2020. Nice getting around to it, you guys. So 5.4 million people over the age of 18 and older, are said to be on the spectrum. And that is coming to us from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And
that is 1 in 45 people.
Which equals out to 2.2% of the population. That's a number that we have looked for a long, long time to see what percentage of the population is on the spectrum. Now, this is just looking at adults, not looking at children. And we know that the prevalence has gone up again. So at the very least, it is 2.2% of the population. And, I don't think that's a surprise to any of us, but it's a little devastating. Don't you think, Nancy?
Yes, it is.
And I hope that this is just the beginning of starting to acknowledge that it isn't just children on the autism spectrum, that there are adults on the spectrum, and that crazy thought, children become adults.
Right.
And right, like this is a surprise to anybody. But sometimes we act with our funding as if that's like, oh, I didn't realize that they were going to get older. You have a son that's 18 now, and I have a son that's about to be 17. And we did the slog when our kids were younger about getting services and getting funding and getting an awareness, while other parents were doing the slog about, hey, what about us, because we have adult children. And it's coming into sharp focus for me. How about for you?
Yes, it is coming into sharp focus.
But hopefully this will be something that gets folks' attention. Years ago, we did a little thing here on Autism Live where we were estimating that it was at least 2%, and I dyed just 2% of my hair orange. It was a thing so that we could say to the new president, President Trump, please don't ignore us, because 2%, sometimes people minimize that and go, well, that's not really that much. But if you want to look back at the old videos, you can see that 2% of my hair dyed bright orange with the rest of it salt and pepper. It was very noticeable. It was not to be ignored. I don't think we got the president's attention with that. And I walked around looking like somebody had smashed a tomato in the front of my head for months, I tell you. But I wish we'd chosen a different color, like blue would have been interesting. But anyway, 2%, it's quite a lot. Hey, we're saying hello to friends in Ireland who are watching.
Well, and top of the morning to you.
Yes, top of the morning to you. And hello to Helen as well. Okay, next story, Nancy.
Yeah, the next story is disturbing. It's a story about it says, isolated from their peers, some autistic men get drawn into extremist views and in rare cases, violence associated with online groups for celibates.
Yeah, and we've heard this story before, and we've been concerned about it before. In fact, we had a guest who had asked to be on the show who identified himself as a gentleman, an adult on the autism spectrum. And I said the other day, if people want to be on the show, all they have to do is pitch an idea to me and tell me what their talking points are, what they want to talk about. And if they have good talking points, we're usually very open to having people on the show. The night before this gentleman was to appear on the show, he went on his own page and was announcing to people that he was going to be on Autism Live and tagged us, which is why we knew about it. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd know about it. And he went off on a rant about being one of these individuals that's part of this group they call themselves incels because they are involuntarily celibate. And he, and that's fine. If that's how you want to identify yourself, that's your business. But then he went on to rant and rave in a very misogynist way about women and how women were responsible for all the things wrong in the world, and that he could trace back all the problems in the world back to when women were given the right to vote. And that because women had choice, that they had stopped choosing to have sexual relations with people who otherwise could not manage to have sexual relations, and that they should, basically the tenet was that they should be forced to comply. Mm-hmm. And that is not a message that we can tolerate here on Autism Live. And so we had to cancel having that guest on the show. But Spectrum News did an article this week that I think is really important for parents to know about, because if you don't know that these things exist online, then how would you know to be on the lookout for them? But especially in these COVID times, they are seeing that young men who are isolated are tuning in to these kinds of things on the internet, and they are very persuadable. And this is not a good thing. This is not what we want for our young men. This is not what we want for our world. This put a shiver down my spine. Did it not you, Nancy?
It definitely put a shiver down my spine. And, it unfortunately, what it promotes is becoming more and more alienated from social groups and more alienated from women in particular.
Yeah. If you are involuntarily celibate and, wanting for a girl to hang out with you, and you start spouting this kind of doctrine, I guarantee you're going to be involuntarily celibate for a lot longer. Because I don't know a single woman who thinks that that's, anything that they want to be within 700 feet of. So horrifying. I couldn't even watch Handmaid's Tale because it was so upsetting to me. And it's the kind of thinking that is being put out by these horrible groups online. So parents, be watching what your adult kids are checking out online. And anyway, because there are other people who want to manipulate our youth as well, but this is particularly heinous. And we are seeing that it is making inroads with this particular population. Horrifying. A lot of today's news is stuff that, like, I almost hate to bring it up because I don't want to give more attention to it. Right. But sometimes you got to talk about it so that you know what to avoid. So I'd rather switch to our fourth story and save our third story for the good news, Nancy. But we have been asked specifically to shed some light on a TikTok controversy that has been going on this week. I've forced myself to watch what I can find online. And fortunately, a lot of it has been taken down, but not all of it. Mm-hmm. There are parents who are advocating for people to boycott TikTok because of something that, and again, I hate to talk about this because I don't want to shed light on it, but we need to talk about it. It was something called the Autism Challenge. And there's some song, I don't know who the artist is. I don't want to know who the artist is because I don't want people to go listen to it, but it has lyrics. I don't know if they were intended for this purpose, but they're heinous. They're just heinous. And I got to be honest, I don't think it has anything to do with autism. But it has everything in the world to do with making fun of people who have certain disabilities. And specifically someone who doesn't have control of their body movements, whether it's through seizures or through other kinds of things. And it's just ignorant and stupid and ridiculous. And apparently they were getting all these young people to take the challenge. And even here's what's crushing to me. Even as they were doing it, the things that they were tagging were, I'm going to go to hell for doing this. I know it's so bad, but they were still doing it. And, you know, TikTok has taken down a lot of it, but some of it they have said, if it doesn't have a lot of tags in it that specifically call out disabilities, any kind of disability, they're leaving it up. I just think that's putrid. I just think that's really shoddy. And it's an opportunity for TikTok to like stand up for what's right. Have you seen any of these videos, Nancy? Because they're just stupid.
I haven't seen the videos, just read about them.
They're just stupid. And I know that many Autism Society of America chapters are also calling for a boycott of TikTok. And, you know, I just have to applaud the parents who stood up and said, this is not right. And there's been a huge letter writing campaign. They've been on TikTok night and day, asking them to stop. They asked for our support in getting that message out. And so I want to encourage anybody. There are petitions. There are multiple. We had multiple parents writing to us saying, please support us in this. So, you know, all you're going to have to do is Google TikTok challenge, TikTok autism challenge, and you will find the petitions that you can sign. And you can also, I think, unfortunately, many of us, because I was like, what is it that we're boycotting, right? And I before I boycott something, I want to know for sure what I'm boycotting. So I, clicked on a couple of videos that people sent me the links to see what it was. And then I was like, I'm just, what we're doing is promoting it, so, so I want to encourage people, don't do what I did. Don't give TikTok that many more views. It's what I'd like to do is throw up on TikTok. And you, Nancy, how do you feel? I would just like to barf on them.
Yeah, I just think it's despicable. And, here's a platform that, if anything, could be promoting good things and awareness as opposed to myths and misconceptions and hateful things.
Yeah. And for our youth, look, I get it. If they're bored, this is stupid. And here's the worst part. They know it's stupid. They're apologizing as they're putting up. Grow up. Like, if you know it's bad, don't put it up. And parents, of teenagers, look at what your children are doing. I don't like TikTok to begin with. I never did. I know that, some people like it for the dance challenge things, but here's an example of, I just want to throw up on them. Yeah. That's all. Just ask me how I really feel.
There's no way.
But in the good news category, let's switch gears for a second. I loved, there was an article in Deseret News in Salt Lake City that caught my eye this week, of a very enterprising mom whose employer was not offering coverage for services for ABA. Right. And she decided, she really felt that either she was going to have to go get another job or that she was going to have to do something about it because it was too important. Her son needed ABA services. And so she did something epic. She was sitting outside and she saw two of the top people who were walking into the building. She was outside for lunch with a friend and she saw them going in, and she said to the friend, stay with the car. I'll be right back. And I can picture you and I doing this, Nancy.
Right. Running after.
Like Thelma and Louise, right? Now I got to point out, she was very, very respectful, and she was professional and said, excuse me, and all the things. But she said to these two people, I need you to understand, I work here and I enjoy working here, and I got an issue and it's with my kid and I'm not the only one. And they said, let's take a look at it. And this company, oh my gosh, I'm so impressed with them. They said, you know what? We're going to cover this. They
I know. Can you believe that? I mean, out of her heroic mom, chasing after them in the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's the company is called CHG Healthcare, and the mom is named Michelle West.
And I got to tell you, Nancy, I'm very excited and proud to say that we have a representative from CHG Healthcare who's going to be joining us on the show on Monday.
Oh, great.
To talk about how they made this decision, why they felt it was important. And I just want to spread some sugar and love on this company, because if this is it right here in a nutshell, right? If we could start to get more people to understand, like this mom helped this company to understand, and to have this company look at it at the way that they did. And they said, we're a company that cares about our employees, and we have multiple employees who are having the same issue. And if we are who we say we are, then we need to step it up. I just love them. CHG Healthcare. And they're going to, we have a representative from their organization who will be with us on Monday's show. I'm very excited about that.
That's great. Kudos to them for realizing how important this is for our children.
And kudos to that mom for, because that mom in that moment, I'm sure she wasn't thinking about everything that could happen, right? But what she did was she changed the circumstances for her child and her life. And she changed the circumstances for all of the employees at that company. And because more and more people are talking about this story, who knows what that could lead to? Maybe another employer will go, I feel that maybe I need to do the right thing too, and have people spread sugar and love on me. Because I'd rather talk about the good stuff any day of the week.
It's good to have a good news story.
Right. We always try to throw at least one of those in there. So I was very happy for that one this week. Okay, so Nancy, our guest, I'm told, is here to join with us, and he is a remarkable young man. I don't know, do you remember when a couple of years ago at the Denim and Diamonds, when you guys were honoring Richard Schiff? Do you remember that?
From the Good Doctor.
From the Good Doctor, and Richard, and from the West Wing. Hi, George.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, George.
And Nancy's with us too, George. And I'm just telling a story on you, George, that we were at this Denim and Diamonds banquet, and Richard Schiff was being given an award, and the evening had gone, shall we say, a little bit long, and Richard Schiff was the last honoree, being big stuff. And he was introduced by, oh gosh, now I'm going to have a senior moment and forget who the guy from West Wing played the president. Nancy, help me.
Not Gary Cole.
Martin Sheen.
Oh, Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen.
Right.
Gary Cole was there too and had gotten up, but Martin Sheen got up and introduced him. It was a big, big deal, y'all. And Richard Schiff got up to do his speech, and he had, I'm not kidding you, loose leaf paper, a fistful of it that was his speech. And he was like, I just wrote a couple of notes to share with you. And we were all like, we're going to be here until the wee hours of the morning with Richard Schiff. But it's Richard Schiff. We don't care, right? And he started to talk, and he got emotional, and he was going on. And he was like, and he goes, and I want to talk about this young actor who came up to me and said, I have this show and I'm taking it to the Edinburgh Festival. And this young actor, and he went on and on and on about this young actor who had inspired him, who was so amazing. And I was like, he's talking about George. He's talking about George. And I was sitting there with Rachel Bird, and both of us were like trying to text you and say, George, Richard Schiff is on stage talking about you. It was so exciting. But that's who he was talking about, because George is inspirational. He really is. And George does a lot of amazing things. And when you have Richard Schiff waxing poetic about you, George, I think that's a sign that you're doing good stuff.
And I was honored that he actually came to my show, and he brought his son with him.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why he was talking about you, because he's pretty impressed with you. So George, tell our audience a little bit about you.
Well, thank you for the introduction there, Shannon. I'm honored to be doing my third consecutive appearance on Autism Live. It's become like an annual tradition.
Yes, we love it. We love having you here.
So my one-man show is called Magic 8 Ball, My Life with Asperger's. I started performing it in 2017. I've done Hollywood Fringe, North Hollywood Fringe, Edinburgh Fringe, New York City. I went back and did it in my first home state of Virginia. And in 1 hour, you laugh, you cry, you learn a lot about Asperger's, and you get from myself personally a firsthand account of what it was like to grow up on the autism spectrum.
How long have you been performing this, George?
Well, I started writing and developing it in 2016, and it had its world premiere at the 2017 Hollywood Fringe Festival in June. So we're going on 3 years next month.
Okay,
Wow.
great. And so it's based on your life experience. Does it start when you're a young man, a young boy?
Yes, it does. I open up the show with a song because I'm also a singer, and one of my life's dreams was to be on American Idol. So I open it up as if I'm on American Idol singing the song. And then I go, and I was going to share my story with the millions of viewers at home, but instead I'm going to share it with all of you. And then we go right back to the young version of me who couldn't say complete sentences. And we just take the story from there. Because there was a period, if it wasn't for Disney movies, I wouldn't have started talking, because my parents kept showing me these Disney movies and I couldn't talk in full sentences. I could just say Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and that's all I could say. It was
Isn't that amazing?
It was nonsensical, so, but I could at least say it.
Yeah,
Right.
no, and that's something. And for all the people who are watching, that just gives everybody so much hope, just to know that there was a time when that was all you could say, and now look at all that you're able to do. That's a very hopeful thing. George, I don't know that if I've ever asked you this before. Did you ever end up auditioning for American Idol?
I auditioned for the show 9 times.
Well, you covered that then. It's a tough show to get into.
I did it 6 times when I was a teenager. I did it once at 16 and once at 17 when I had to drag my mom kicking and screaming because of parent and legal guardian. And then I saved up my money and I traveled around the country and I auditioned 4 times, determined not to take no for an answer. Didn't work out, but then I walked away from it for 7 years. I moved to LA. I did other things, and then I went back to it when I was 25 and figured, why don't I give it a try now? And I didn't make it, but I got a call back. So I thought, oh, this is it. I'm finally going to get on the show. This is my big break. But then I ended up just getting a call back, and it didn't go any further than that. And then I did it 2 more times, but now I'm 31 and I'm too old. So
isn't that crazy? I don't think people realize, because when we watch American Idol, it looks like everyone who shows up gets in the room.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, the judges were Simon, Paula, and Randy, the original 3.
Yeah.
And it made it look like on TV, oh, you just go to the audition and you walk right in and meet them. And it's like, no, they have thousands of singers come to these cattle call auditions, and they only pick hundreds. I used to jokingly say you have a greater chance of getting into Harvard than you do getting on that show.
Yeah. And to be honest, a lot of times they will pick people who are truly horrible, right, to go in. And then they will pick people who are both good and have a story that they're interested in. And in the early days of Idol, I think, there was nobody that was there that had a story like what you had. Then James Durbin made a little bit of an inroad. I got to say, George, I feel bad because I feel like if you had gone in during the Katy Perry years, that you would have gotten in.
Well,
do you feel that?
I did try during Katy Perry's first year, but it's I mean, the thing about me, and I'm man enough to know this about myself as a singer. I'm good. I'm not great, and they tend to want like greatness, and I'm good, but I'm not like great. So, but I mean,
well, good for you for being able to like take a look at that. So
Excuse
George,
the barking dog.
And we actually didn't hear it, Nancy. I got to be honest, we didn't even hear it. Oh, now I hear it. Okay, now I hear it. There we go.
Where I live. So.
I have a dog that will bark at her barking dogs. That will be super fun. But George, I got to say, you have been tearing it up recently. You've had some work in the mainstream. Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing.
Yes, I was recently a guest star on NCIS Los Angeles. And that
for you.
That was such an honor. And I shot the episode in October, and the episode aired in November. It was my first guest starring role. I got my own name and my own title card and the opening credits of the show, which was
that's fantastic.
And it was a nice momentum I had going there in the fall, because I also did my first independent feature film called Pencil Town, where I acted opposite William Moseley, who was Peter in the Chronicles of Narnia movies. and I acted opposite Paul Dooley, who I got personally to play my grandfather in the movie.
Wow. Wow.
Paul,
and are we able to see that movie yet?
Well, it's an independent feature film. So right now everything is wrapped in post-production and the film's ready to go. We were going to have a screening in April, but then this happened.
Yeah.
And
this happened.
So hopefully we'll get a distributor soon. It's such a beautiful story. I play an autistic employee at the pencil factory who William Moseley, the main character, befriends in the movie, and it's such a beautiful friendship.
Is it a funny movie?
There's definitely moments of comedy in it. There's definitely moments of drama. Paul Dooley said in a behind-the-scenes featurette that we shot that it's very much like a modern-day Frank Capra movie.
Oh, how nice.
It's such a slice of life. There's moments of drama. There's moments of comedy. It's such a beautiful story. I can't wait for the world to see it.
Great.
Yay.
Well, George,
did you have a question, Nancy?
Take us back to how you have so many accomplishments and achievements. And then you were talking about when you were a young boy that you could only utter a few words and couldn't even put together complete sentences. Take us back to how your trajectory of how this all happened. I mean, what your journey was like.
Well, I was the last out of 4 children. I have 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. So my mother could sense very early on that something was different about me because I wasn't developing at the same rapid pace that neurotypical children usually develop. I wasn't making eye contact, and I wasn't like interacting with my mom like, how big is the baby? And you go this big. I wasn't doing any of that with my mother. And so I was very lucky in my life. I had a great mother who was very hands-on, and she made sure that I went to different therapists, psychologists, doctors. I mean, she was very on it, and I did get a lot of social training. So my mother really did take the reins on and worked with me to make me the high functioning adult that I am today.
And how do you feel about that? You know, sometimes we have self-advocates on that are older and they are not in love with the therapies that they got when they were a kid.
I mean, I understand where that comes from, because sometimes, unfortunately, in today's society, sometimes therapy is done for good, and sometimes therapy is done more harm than it has good. Like you look at gay youth in America and conversion therapy, and that was something that was, you know, more harm than it was good. But I was so oblivious to it as a child. I was so aloof to it that I legitimately thought that this was a thing that regular kids did.
Wonderful.
I was so aloof to it, and I was so oblivious to it, and I wouldn't be the high functioning adult. And I can't say that it was completely in the hands of the therapists that I saw over the years. It was also my mother and my environment that I grew up in. So I can't just say that it was all because of the therapist. It was also because of my mother. Well,
and because of you, George. I mean, you know, when all is said and done, you're the person who did the work. I mean, I'm all for giving a shout out to the moms and to the therapists, but you also did the work. It was important to you and you did it.
Well, music and movies and television are my life. I am an actor, I am a singer, I am a writer. And if it wasn't for music, movies, and television, if it wasn't for entertainment, I wouldn't have started talking. So that was my way of connecting with the world.
Right. When did you first start performing, doing music and acting?
Well, my family was actually very involved with a local theater company called the Westmoreland Players in Virginia, and they did a lot of plays with them in the 90s when my family was still living in Virginia. So Oliver was the first time that I was ever on stage when I was 6 years old.
Do you remember that?
I remember parts of it. I mean, I was in the ensemble, and so I would be a part of the kids playing Ring Around the Rosie, Pockets Full of Posies, Ashes, Ashes, We All Fall Down. Like I was on stage with my mom most of the time, and It was basically like I was in the ensemble and I was, on stage for all the big town moments in Oliver.
But it was a beginning. It was a
was.
beginning that has led to a lifelong passion for you.
And then I didn't do any more theater for the rest of the 90s. But then when I moved to Pennsylvania in 2000, I went to middle school in the fall of 2000. And by the spring of 2001, I was in Fiddler on the Roof in the ensemble. And it was just nonstop with school theater productions, church productions, summer productions, I didn't have parents in the industry. So I made the most with the resources that I had. And any opportunity there was to perform, I was there.
What did you love about it, George?
I just got to, when I was younger, obviously I don't feel this way now when I was 31, but when I was younger, I did used to think of acting as I can be anybody but myself, because obviously when I got to 6th grade, that was when I was put in a class with children that were more severely autistic than I was, because my public school district didn't know what to do with me. And you have to keep in mind, in the 90s and the early 2000s, autism awareness was still in its infancy. And so my school district, my public school district of Pennsylvania was like, well, he's on the spectrum. Even though he's high functioning, we should really put him here, because even though he's more high functioning than these children, he'll struggle if we mainstream him. And so unfortunately, that's where I was placed for 2 years before I finally got out. And I didn't want to be myself at that point. So acting for me was like an escape, because I could pretend to be somebody else who wasn't myself.
How did you and your mom get you out of the special day class?
Well, they were going to wait until I was in high school, but I was so miserable there. I could have gotten out after 6th grade, but the problem was I had already made friends by the end of my 6th grade year who I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't go to that middle school as a regular student because that wasn't in my district. So it was either I leave the school and go back to the middle school in my district, or I stay, but I have to stay under the special ed class. So I sucked it up and I went back in 7th grade to do the same thing, stay in the special ed class, to still be around my friends. But then after 7th grade, I was like, okay, enough's enough. I have to get out of this. And so I got out and I went back to my own middle school for 8th grade. And
was that hard?
I talk about this in my show. Actually, it was really hard because being a young teenager who wasn't in touch with his sexuality yet and wasn't aware of it, because I'm not straight, and I was called every name in the book, to my face and behind my back. You name it, I was called it. So 8th grade was really, really rough.
I'm so
how
sorry.
did you cope with that? How did you survive that time?
I had to survive it. There wasn't really any other choice. Homeschooling wasn't going to be an option for me, and I had to face it every day, and it wasn't easy. Some days were tougher than others. Luckily, I had a production I was doing that year, Bye Bye Birdie, that kept me getting out of bed every morning, just so that way I could survive school and go to rehearsal every day after school. And
George,
really rough times, but I made it through.
Did your mom know that you were being bullied, and did your mom know at that time that you were gay?
Well, I personally don't identify as gay. For me, my personal
Forgive me.
No, it's okay. I personally identify as queer just because my sexuality is a little more non-binary, because I was attracted to women at the time, and I'm not opposed to being with a woman. I didn't fall for my first guy until I was 27 years old. But unfortunately, a lot of kids, go through the whole process of being labeled gay or assumed to be gay. And my mother was aware of it, but unfortunately, the problem with public middle schools at the time was, unless you were physically bullied, the public school system couldn't really do anything to protect you, because you could report the kids calling you names, but then if you put those kids in front of the principal, of course they're going to deny it. And nobody had phones back then that recorded things. So you were kind of on your own, unfortunately.
What an amazing story that you have. And I love the fact that are being a storyteller and telling that story in the medium that you enjoy, theater. That's such a wonderful thing. Do you think that when this is all over that you will continue to do the Magic 8 Ball, or are there plans for the Magic 8 Ball?
Well, for right now, we don't have any plans at the moment for Magic 8 Ball, but I'm actually writing a brand new show.
Okay.
It's been 3 years doing Magic 8 Ball. I have a lot more I want to say. I'm still in the writing and developing process, so no official announcement yet, but I'm gonna talk about dating and sex and what that's like from an autistic adult perspective.
Great.
Love it.
And
very much needed, I think, today to get that perspective.
And luckily, we've had the floodgates open up for us with the disabled and queer stories, because there's a guy named Ryan O'Connell who has a show on Netflix called Special, which is about a gay man with cerebral palsy. And so I feel like now is the time for more of those disabled and queer stories. So I would like to toss my hat into that arena and tell my stories and my experiences from dating and sex and what that's like as an autistic adult. So,
well, I love that. Nancy and I will love to hear about that, so we can come and support you when you're ready.
It's going to be very bold, and it's not going to be for everybody. So
well, that's okay. I look forward to it.
This is going to be an adults only show.
There we go. There we go. So George, this time that we live in has been very challenging for a lot of people for a lot of different ways. I wonder if you could talk just as an actor about, this is devastating for actors right now.
Well, yeah, unfortunately it is devastating for actors because Hollywood is completely shut down. Nobody's shooting. There's no auditions. So, and I kind of feel like, come on, I was on this great momentum in the fall. I was booking job after job after job, and then everything came to a screeching halt.
Yes.
But I'm just trying to make the most of this time, because this isn't forever. This too shall pass. Obviously, the tricky part is we don't know how long it's going to last, and we might not get back to normal until we have a vaccination, and that's going to take time.
Yeah.
And, so I've just been trying to make the most of it. I've been writing the new show, and I missed so many movies in the theaters last year. So I've been going to Redbox and renting all the movies that I missed in 2019 and just catching up on those. And I luckily did get some financial assistance from unemployment and the Actors Fund, because I did work as an actor last year. And I still have a job that I'm doing. I'm still delivering foods to have some extra cash there. I just don't want to be in any kind of rental debt when this is all said and done. And my lovely apartment that I have here with a roommate is expensive to rent. So, yeah. And unfortunately, our landlord's not cutting us any kind of, breaks. So.
Wow. I just am so struck by how amazing. Honestly, Nancy, if somebody could say to us that our kids would someday be living in their own apartment and voicing concerns about, I want to make sure that I'm not in rent debt, living on their own, we would be ecstatic, would we not?
Absolutely.
It's like a thing devoutly to be wished. When do you think, when did you know that you were going to be somebody who was going to be able to live on your own? When was that inside you?
I mean, I knew from a young age that I wanted to be an entertainer. I don't have a backup plan. This is it for me. I'm going to do this till my grave. And I just knew. I just knew it's like, okay, I want to be in movies. I want to be in TV. I want to move to LA. I don't know a soul there, but once I get there, I'll figure it out.
So you always knew that you were going to be out and independent on your own. When did your mom know? When did your mom know and think it's okay for George to leave the house?
Well, my mom didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I'm very lucky to have two very supportive parents here. If I'm ever in any trouble financially, they are a phone call away. I try really hard to not abuse that privilege, just because they've already done so much for me. So I try really hard to not abuse that privilege. And I did say to my mother that I wanted to go to college out here in California, and I did go to college out here in California. And my mother was okay with it, because my mother was like, well, I have a brother who lives in San Diego, so if he's ever in any trouble, he can always go there, and it's California, not Mars. So
I love your mother.
my mother was very hands-on. She taught me right from wrong, and she wanted to make sure, she did push me to make sure that I could still be as much of a high functioning citizen of society that I possibly could be.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't going to coddle me. She was going to push me forward to be all that I could be.
Was it difficult for you to make the transition to independence and being on your own?
It was at first. I moved off my college dorms in 2010, and I was living on a friend's couch, and I didn't have a job.
Uh-huh.
And it was a little rough because that was when I got the harsh reality that life isn't a dorm room. I was a little overwhelmed by the fact that, oh, I'm moving into an apartment. Oh, I have to get furniture. Oh, I have to pay for gas and electric bills, and life's not a dorm room where they just supply everything for you when you move in. So I definitely
why can't life be an all-inclusive resort? Right? Wouldn't that be great?
So I definitely got that harsh reality at 21. And there were definitely days when I was ready to pack it up and either move back to my college dorm, or days when I was like, maybe I should just go home for a while and be with my parents and regroup. But because of my drive and my desire to do this industry, I toughed it out through the rough times.
Man, you're so inspirational, George. I have to ask you, like, who inspires you?
I mean, as an artist, I'm easily inspired by art. So if I hear a really good song on the radio, or if there's a really good TV show, or if there's a really good movie that I watch, or even if there's some great theater that I see, I'm easily inspired to create. And obviously, being a character actor myself, I obviously look up to other character actors. I got Paul Dooley, a well-known character actor, the movie dad, and now movie grandpa, to play my grandpa in the movie. He came and saw my one-man show because I came and saw his 1 year prior, and I kept in touch with his assistant, and he came to see my show 1 year later, and we've been in touch ever since, socially. So when I got the call back for this role in Penciltown, I read the script, and I saw that I was going to have a grandpa in the movie. So I said to them, bold as brass in the callback, if you hire me for this, I could get you Paul Dooley. So I got the part, and then they made an offer to Paul Dooley's agent, and I called Fiona, his assistant, and said, I'm begging Paul to do this. And at the wrap party, Paul and his wife, Winnie Holtzman, who wrote the book for Wicked and created a show called My So-Called Life, she came up to me and said, the minute Paul found out it was you, he was immediately eager to do this.
Wow.
How wonderful.
I loved My So-Called Life. I still remember that show. It was
You too. I was honored to have Winnie in my audience because I was a big fan of that show as well. So it was an honor to have the woman who created it in my audience, and that's Paul's wife.
We have viewers who've written in. One says, I love hearing from individuals like George and Kobe Bird. I want to share them with my K-3 students. I want them to see that anything is possible. And my husband wrote in and said, saw your scenes from NCIS. Great job, George.
Thank you.
And my husband's an actor, so he's fussy. So that's a compliment.
Yeah, I told Eric Christian Olsen, who was the tall guy with the blonde hair, in between takes. I told him, this is my first guest starring role, and he was like, "It is not. You're really good." So I was honored to get that from him, and I had been following Eric's career for years. I had seen a lot of his movies, so I was really honored to hear that from him.
There is a core group, though, of individuals that are here in LA that are actors who happen to also identify themselves being somewhere on the spectrum. And, I remember when roles first started to come out, it was like, wow, this is amazing. And now it seems like there's more and more, but does it ever get contentious competing with, because I know a couple of people, I can think of one person in particular who was up for that role on the Pencil movie, we have many guests that are actors that Yes. And you guys seem to tend to go up for the same kinds of roles. Does it get, contentious?
I try really hard to not let it get contentious. Like, you also know Alex Plank, and him and I.
That's what I was thinking.
Him and I have become friends in the past year, and my feeling is, and I get it. We're both in our 30s. We're both white. We both have Asperger's. We're both in the same category. So we are going to go out for a lot of the same jobs. But my feeling is, if I win, he wins. If he wins, I win. If one of us gets it, we all win. And I really hate how catty and competitive this industry can get. So my feeling is we should all be lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. And my feeling is, hey, if you're good to me, and if I'm fortunate enough to make it to the other side and get the massive success and fortune and fame as an actor, if I'm lucky enough to break through that glass ceiling and get to the other side, I will throw the rope back over for other people.
I know you will. I know you will. And that's exactly the person that I was thinking of, because I know you guys have gone up for the same role a couple of times, and sometimes it's you and sometimes it's him. Yeah. And I got to say, yes, you described yourself both very well in that category, but you are both infinitely different flavors.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely. I mean,
totally different flavors.
I jokingly said that to Gail once, our agent, because we have the same agent, and I was like, "Well, you now have the both of us because we're both white, we're both Asperger's, and we're both in our 30s." And he was like, "Yeah, but you're both still different in your,
Yes.
So, absolutely." But I still love Alex. He's become a friend, and
I love that.
And we actually just recently talked a couple of weeks ago, because we're both obviously self-quarantining right now. So we'll occasionally text each other or call in on each other just to see how each other's doing. And
wonderful.
I just want to keep that alliance with all the actors I come across with. I mean, whether you're on the spectrum or not. I mean, I try to keep that bond and alliance with every actor I meet.
Well, we're so proud of you, George. And Nancy, I've been hugging it. Is there anything you want to ask George?
I would like to know, given your path and some of the early struggles you have, what words of wisdom or inspiration would you say to people out there that want to do sort of follow the path you have chosen? What words of inspiration and encouragement would you give them?
This acting teacher I used to work with once said this to me, and it once said it to all of her students, and it struck me. And it was something that her acting teacher used to say: if you can do something else in your life, you should do it. But if you can't do anything else, then you need to do this. And you can't make it about money. You can't make it about fame. You have to make it about the work and the joy and the satisfaction. I'm trying to find the right word.
Satisfaction.
And the joy and the satisfaction that comes with the work. Because this industry that you're going into, it's going to go up and down. One minute you're going to be hot, you're going to be in demand, and the next minute it's going to be a dry spell. It's going to go up and down, and that happens to everybody at every level in the business. Whoopi took that job on The View as a moderator because she said, it came to me at a time when I couldn't get arrested. I couldn't get an acting job anywhere. So it's going to go up and down, and Whoopi's an EGOT, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. So it doesn't matter what level you're at. It's always going to go up and down with you, and you have to ride the wave. So if you can do something else, I would say do it. But if you can't, and that's where I'm in, I can't do anything else. This is what drives me to continue living my life, is my art and this industry, and wanting to contribute to the industry, wanting to do work that impacts other people. That's what keeps me going. So I would say, if you live, breathe, eat, sleep this, keep doing this. Do not give up. And also, I would also give these other two pearls of wisdom. Don't kill yourself trying to be successful in the industry, because I've learned over my 11 years, almost 12 years here in Los Angeles doing this industry, the minute I stopped killing myself trying to make a career happen, that's when stuff started happening, because I stopped killing myself over it. There was a period where I was going to my acting class 3 times a week. I was self-submitting on Actors Access, LA Casting, Now Casting every single day. I wasn't going home to visit my family except for once a year. I was too focused. So you have to take the time in your life to still enjoy life. And you have to take the moments to truly enjoy life, because we only have one of these and we don't know what's waiting on the other side. This is not a dress rehearsal. So there has to be a balance where, yes, you're focused, yes, you're all about the work, but you also have to be all about your own life, whether you're partnered with somebody who you're sharing your life with romantically, or, you know, whether you have family that you want to make sure you visit as much as you can, especially in my case, because mine live on the other side of the nation. And the last thing I would want to say is, don't be afraid to be your 110% authentic self. For years, I didn't talk about my autism as an actor. I did not talk about it. But the minute I started to embrace it, that was when my whole life and my whole world and my whole career started to change, because I started to embrace it.
Well, I gotta say,
this is an industry where you want to stand out, not blend in. So the more you have, the better off and the better your chances are at making an impact in this industry. This is an industry where you have to be you and you have to stand out.
And I gotta say, George, I think you also did, I think, one of the most important things that an actor can do. You hired yourself. By writing something for yourself and investing in it and producing it, and getting other producers to produce it, you hired yourself. And I remember years ago hearing Cameron Manheim talk, and when somebody said to her, you know, you are not the stereotypical face of a female in Hollywood. How did you get the success that you have? And she was, you know, she's still a big star, but she was like, you know, on everything at that point. And she said, well, you know, the truth is I got one job and I took that money and I hired myself. I wrote a one-woman show, and I was clear that I wanted people to be able to see me in that one-woman show, to see the kind of, because she said she was going on auditions and she wasn't getting anywhere. But so she hired herself, and I saw you do that. You hired yourself and you continue to hire yourself. And I think there's something about that affirmation and that confidence that the rest of the world sees and goes, ah, that's a true talent. And they recognize it in themselves first.
And how I got the inspiration to do my one-man show was actually from Whoopi. I was watching an episode of Oprah's Masterclass, and Whoopi was going through the same struggles I was going through as an actor, which is I wasn't getting any jobs, I wasn't getting hired, but I still wanted to show people what I could do as an actor. So that was when I started working on my one-man show, because Whoopi did her one-woman show that showed all the different characters she could do. And then Mike Nichols saw it, and then he put it on Broadway, and then Steven Spielberg saw it and fell in love with her and put her in The Color Purple, and the rest is history. And I got to tell that to Whoopi in person when I met her. And
did she love that?
Yes, and I even got to follow up a couple months later in Vegas, and I got to give her a hug on stage during her Q&A portion of the show. So that was
exciting.
Cool. I do have Whoopi Goldberg to thank, because Whoopi is another one, like Cameron Manheim, who doesn't fit into the stereotype of what Hollywood wants you to be. And when I started doing my one-man show at first in 2017, I was telling people, well, I figured if Hollywood isn't going to give me a job, then I'm going to make myself a job.
Yep. Now I got to ask you, and then we're running out of time, but do you ever, and I hope I know the answer to this, I hope, do you get the opportunity to audition for roles in TV and film that don't have anything to do with autism?
Well, when I was self-submitting for projects in Actors Access and LA Casting and Now Casting, I was playing more neurotypical people than atypical people, because it was student films, it was short films, it was a bunch of, you know, it was a bunch of those kind of projects that I was self-submitting for, and most of them didn't have pay. You would just do it for a credit, a copy, and a meal. And I was trying to build up a reel in Hollywood. I haven't had the chance yet, because both of the roles I did in NCIS Los Angeles and Penciltown were both autistic roles. I haven't had the chance yet to play a neurotypical role in the Hollywood sphere just yet. And I did have a friend who did say to me, well, you don't want to get pigeonholed. And I was like, well, yes, I don't want to get pigeonholed. That's true. But I also have to get known first. And I am willing to be the best autistic guy Hollywood's ever seen if that gets me known. And then once I'm known, then I can do whatever I want.
I like that plan.
I mean,
George, where can people follow you for more information?
I mean, just one last quick thing.
Okay.
Sally Field was Gidget and the Flying Nun first, before she was Norma Ray, before she was Mama Gump, before she was Mary Todd Lincoln. You have to start somewhere first.
Absolutely.
Good advice. Very good advice.
Yeah,
we're out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Shannon asked.
I am on Twitter and Instagram at George F. Steeves, GeorgeF Steeves. I'm on Facebook, just myself, George Steeves, and I'm a friend of Shannon's on Facebook, so I'm sure you can find me through Shannon's friends list. And just the last thing I wanted to say is the last 2 appearances I did on Autism Live, I was promoting the show and I was promoting the fundraiser to go to Edinburgh and upcoming appearances in New York and LA. So now, since we're all in self-quarantine here, if you want to watch my one-man show yourself in the pleasure of your own home, that is now available online for free. Go to www.vimeo.com/magic8ball. So vimeo.com/magic8ball, the number 8. It's not written out in letter form. So /magic8ball. There's 3 videos on there, and it's called Magic 8 Ball, My Life with Asperger's, written and performed by George Steeves. And you can watch the whole show for free in 1 hour. You'll go on quite the emotional roller coaster ride, and you'll get to experience with me everything I went through.
Is there a password on Vimeo, or it's available?
It's completely available and open. You just go on vimeo.com/magic8ball. There's 3 videos, and it's right there available to watch in your own home.
Yay.
Great.
Thank you, George. We adore you.
Joining us today, George. You've been a delightful guest. We love having you.
I love being here.
All right, you guys, we're totally out of time. We'll be back on Monday. We've got a great show. Bonnie Yates and that representative from CHG Healthcare is going to be joining us on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.